welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast, episode 51. My name's Ian.
And I'm Nikki. No,
And
this is your bit. Yay!
Yay! See, I didn't even warn him that I was going to do that.
That's really me.
I thought, let's see if he butts in.
Just waited for silence. That was it. You know.
I am so mean. Yes, we have. This is the first time we've done this. You know, Mike and Pete have been working for us for 2 years. We've never had them on the show like this.
They're not special enough.
No. So we've got Tom on. He's come on for a valid reason, however. We're doing, at the end of this, a spoiler-filled review of Avengers Endgame, because it's like out and everything.
It is.
But it will be right at the end. We will give you warning.
No, don't warn them. Just just make them be on tenterhooks for the whole episode.
After you've listened to us and all the segments, it'll be after all the segments and everything, and we'll give you, you know, if you've not seen it, big old warning. Okay. And if you've not seen it, why?
That's very
yeah.
Because people have to work.
You're not allowed a life.
Working? That's no, not when Avengers. No way.
Cinema first, life second.
Yeah. My other half took a day off for it. Anybody can.
Now
right
that's
way.
dedication.
Oh yeah.
It was a case of you had to go and see it before the spoilers.
Yeah.
It's quite sad that that's the case now. You couldn't just wait a week and watch it the second week. You felt you had to go and watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either really unfair or amazing marketing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Although I will give them something that there hasn't really been many spoilers so far. So
no.
Yeah, the community's done quite well on that.
Give it a few more days.
I went searching.
You went searching?
I went searching because, you know, why not? And like on Twitter, it does warn you before you go into it.
I'm just disappointed that you went searching.
I went searching after I'd watched it.
That's all right.
So, and then I did the Game of Thrones stuff. So just so that I can lord it over Ian. Because, you know, I don't like Game of Thrones, but I know everything that's going on.
I've not finished watching this episode yet. Shut up. Right, before we get into reviews, we've got a few things to talk about. First of all, the awesome podcast, episode 200, is coming up a week after this comes out.
Yeah.
Live in London.
One night only.
No, we're not going because we don't do southern things.
Hey?
Well, southerners smell, you know.
I don't smell.
What do you say, Tom? Southerners, eh? Southerners. Although you call me a southerner, Spirit.
No,
so.
no.
Yeah, I'm north of the wall. That's it. You know.
It's like, yeah.
So
it's not fair.
Obviously, most people probably can't get down there. However, you can still support the guys.
I think quite a lot of people are in London, you know.
Oh, I know that. But you can still support the guys. There's a raffle going on. Now, get involved if you're interested. Have a look on their feed. There's information all on there.
Yep.
£10 for 10 tickets, and there's so much art and comics available through this raffle.
Yeah.
Won by you.
There isn't.
There is.
Oh my gosh.
Actual artwork. But, I mean, that may be the top prize, and not everyone can win the top prize. But there's so much going on the day that if you're interested in just getting involved, do it. And all the proceeds from the raffle go to Little Heroes Comics. So, yeah, none of those awesome boys get the mitts on the money. They're grubby little fingers.
That's because they're southern.
Yeah, I know. Going to a good charity. So get involved with that, please, everybody.
Yeah.
And if you're too late, if you listen to this a year down the line, just give Little Heroes some money anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Festival emails have gone out, so if you've tried to get a table,
you will know now.
For the Lakes this year, yes, you will know. I don't know. I don't think everyone knows.
Oh, don't say that. Now that I've said everyone knows.
No,
because they're sitting there going, I didn't get the email.
I'm being attacked by a cat. I don't think everybody knows yet. I don't think they've all gone out, but they're going out.
They're going out.
So keep your eyes peeled if you've applied for a table. It's quite exciting seeing the names pop up. It gets more exciting year on year.
What, because we know them now?
Yeah. Because we like him.
Yeah, they can be there.
They can be there. They might even buy us a drink.
Yeah, it's all down now to who buys the beers.
Have you ever been to the lakes, Tom? I don't think you have you?
No, I've not yet. No.
No.
No, we've not got a chance to get down yet. So.
Well, 1 year, definitely. If not this year,
Yes.
we'll get you down next year, that's for sure. They say it's so different to everything else.
Yeah,
That's what's so interesting about it. It really is.
I think David from our podcast has been down. I think he's been down a couple of times.
Yeah.
But he seems to enjoy it every time he goes. So
Yeah,
definitely.
It's just great. We've got all these great cons up in the north.
Yeah.
We've not got as many as the south, but all the ones we have up here are quality.
Yes,
That's the way I look at it.
it's the
Go on,
best
what
outlook.
are you laughing at?
I'm just saying, you're just alienating everyone south.
You know, I love you really for short breaks. And I've just spent a week in Norfolk.
Yeah, all right.
All right,
I'm
that was
sorry.
enough.
I'm so sorry.
And finally, before we get to looking at some reviews and stuff, as of today, which this is out on the 1st of May, your comic is out.
It's out there.
Leaf is out.
Leaf.
How does it feel to release this, even though it's a day before that we're recording it? And you haven't even got it in your hands yet.
myself into the future again. I can't do this. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
It's really exciting, actually.
Yeah.
And all the people that pre-ordered, it's like, oh, I hope they
You're
like
going to be
it.
signing in Waterstones.
I know, right? I think I'm just sneaking in round the back and then just scribbling with a biro and then running.
Waterstones
So-
Kendall, that is.
No, the one on Oxford Street. Yeah, Waterstones Kendall. I do think I'm just sneaking in, signing 5 copies, and they'll just put it on the shelves forever. I
Yes.
might get the kids to pop
But
in and
2
buy
years
one.
ago, did you ever think
No.
that would be happening? I know it's only,
No, not at all.
minimal, but it's still,
You got to start somewhere.
yeah.
That's it, isn't it?
And you've had a nice review from Metafrog as well.
Yes, lovely review from them.
They've been really supportive.
Yeah.
You know, we sent an email saying, have you got any advice for a kids author?
Yeah.
You know, because it's hard to get reviews for kids' book. I mean, and I know that coming from us, because I don't tend to pick up the kids' books to review because I don't feel I can give it what it needs.
Okay.
If that makes sense. You need a kid really to give you the full information.
Yeah, I get that.
So it is hard to get reviews for kids' books. So, you know, how do they go about it?
Yeah.
And they've just been really friendly.
They have, yeah.
It's been great.
Really nice.
And I think we'll certainly, the next book that comes out, which is underway. I say this every episode.
I was going to say, I don't think a sheet of A4 where you've just drawn some boxes it's underway.
I've written half a script.
You've written a page. 2
Bloody
pages.
But no, we'll be sending it to them in the future because I just think their support has just been so nice
really,
from people
really
who've been in this situation.
Yeah.
In fact, they just went for it, didn't they? They quit their jobs and so forth and just went for it. We
Can
ain't
I
doing
do
that.
that?
No,
Oh,
no,
right then.
no. Don't laugh, Tom. Right, so we've got a couple of books quick one actually. Kickstarter. There's a Kickstarter I want everyone to go and have a look at. Have you heard of this, Tom? Sprouting and Other Tales of the Curious by Asa Wheatley.
Just briefly, I'm on my social media hiatus at the minute, so I'm not catching up on things. But I have seen little bits and bobs kicking about. Yeah,
Really interesting. It's what pulled me in was the stories more than anything, more than the art. It was the stories just really got me, especially the first one, which was sprouting itself. It's just something about it that it's all about nature, essentially, and there's something about it that just pulled me into the story. I don't want to go on too much about it. The best thing to do personally is go and have a look on the Kickstarter page. Just search for Sprouting and Other Tales of the Curious. It's up there to back at the moment. When's it ending? Let's have a look. 5th of May, so you've got a few days. Go and have a look. It's well worth giving it a back, the whole comic. Really enjoyed what I read. So anyway, that's my shout out for that. Before we review, Sonic the Hedgehog came up today.
Oh, God.
Now,
Oh.
this may not be a comic. Well, it is. They've done Sonic comics, so I can bring it in.
Okay.
That's how I'm doing it.
We'll bring it in like that, yeah.
So,
Okay.
Tom, how old are you? You've got to make us feel bad. How old are you now?
I am. I will be 30 this year.
Baby!
So, did you grow up with Sonic though?
Did
you play?
It wasn't around then.
It was still it's been going, ever going.
I kind of did and kind of didn't, just purely because I was a Nintendo guy myself. But,
You got the Mario movie. Anyway.
yeah, I know. But yeah, no, Sonic's always been on the periphery. My my cousin was a big Sonic fan, sickeningly, in fact. But yeah, it's always been kind of there. Sonic's always kicking about, isn't he? In one fashion or another, unfortunately.
The biggest thing about video game movies is they always cock up, let's be honest. There's very few out there that are good.
Okay, name one.
Mortal Kombat. Okay, Jesus. It's cheesy, but it follows the game.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing. You can be a bad bad video game movie as long as you're following what the game's about.
Right.
Mario, Street Fighter, none of these, they're all dreadful.
Yes.
And even though I'd seen some images of Sonic looking like, I don't know, an anorexic.
It's like he's been put in a vice and just pulled.
Yeah.
I still thought, you know what, maybe they can do something interesting with this. So, Tom, I've just made you watch a trailer before you came on. What were your impressions?
Well, there was a bit of Gangster's Paradise going on. It was getting cut off at every 2 minutes. Anything that happened, it was, they had to cut the song off. So for a start, the trailer was really badly put together. I think the last thing that Jim Carrey was in that was like a kind of tight a property, like a licensed property, was Kick-Ass 2, if I remember rightly. Yeah. And I walked out of that, so I'm really not looking forward to this. He just looks ridiculous.
Yes.
Utterly ridiculous. Okay. And a little flash of him at the end is like properly as Robotnik as well, all kind of scruffy in it. Oh, it just didn't work at all. And CG Sonic he just, honestly,
Now, I'm going to be honest here. I actually thought Jim Carrey was quite good as Robotnik.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, no.
No.
I quite liked that.
No.
That's the only bit I did like.
No.
Oh, God. After everything that's been going on with him recently as well, and you got the Jim and Andy documentary and how he was when he was in, was it Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee or whatever, and just kind of a bit odd, and like he's kind of shaking this mortal coil in his head a little bit, to then have him come and be in like a kid's thing. I was like, oh no, please no.
But the whole thing, when it just didn't feel like the game.
You just said this is Mario all over.
It is. It's like they've not learned from the original Mario mistakes. It's just like, let's look at the game and completely ignore the majority of it and make something completely different.
It stirred no emotion apart from
Yeah. When
they've just been absolutely beating Sonic to death. Ever since Sonic 3D, he's just like, it's just bad property after bad property. Like, it's just bad games and now a bad film to accompany it. Maybe the comics are a wee bit better. I don't know. I didn't read them myself, but honestly,
it's just Sega.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's depressed me now. Right, let's. I've got 3 things to talk about, comic related. First of all, how do we pronounce this? We discussed it before. John Tucker, he's becoming something of a revolution in comics. He's trying new things,
pushing the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And his new comic, it's spelled CYDO, CYDO. Who knows?
Go with
CYDO.
It's 1 page.
Mm-hmm.
That's.
Yep.
Is that your review?
That's my review.
It's 1 page.
It's 1 page. It's clever.
It's very clever.
The thing I don't really want to talk about the story.
No.
But it is a full mini story on the back with a front cover.
I love the front cover.
It's a gorgeous cover.
Yeah.
And he's selling it for £1. Poster size.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all I can say. Anything you can say, Tom?
The way that it's kind of presented, I had actually said to John, it's almost like the posters you used to get in like kids magazines that you could pull out of the middle.
Oh,
There's like one side has something on it and the other side has something on it.
Yeah.
But you used to get ones that were like stories on one side and then a poster on the other side. It totally reminds me of that straight off the bat.
Yeah.
But yeah, without saying anything about the story itself, there's a lot of things within the presentation and within the art that are just, I think, absolutely spellbinding. Like the use of colour and the way that John presents panels and everything. And actually, he's got such a good eye for presentation within each panel. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's just getting that small story done right on a single page as well. Getting that writing done, it's challenging, and he's just got it. But it's just the fact that it's £1. You know, it's sort of, if you're passing him, is it Glasgow Comic Con is that, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're going to pass him, just grab it.
Oh, definitely.
And grab me one.
I was going to say, and get
because we can't get one. We've seen a digital conversion of it, and obviously we've loved that.
Yeah.
It's going to be times 10 to see it up. You know,
you'd frame it, wouldn't you?
Well, you frame, but which way would you put it?
You'd buy 2.
I feel it deserves it.
It does.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of like you would have to get one to put on the shelf and one to put on the wall. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I don't know which way would you put it around on the wall though. Is the thing I'm thinking, because I'd like both sides.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, you could just dangle it in the middle of the room.
Oh, I like that.
And if he keeps making more, then that's it. It's going to be like washing in your room, just dangling everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But, no, he's a clever guy, and I think what he's doing is really interesting, and I'm intrigued to see what else he comes up with.
Oh yeah,
down the line.
You're definitely right. John's definitely pushing the boundaries a wee bit and making the kind of the inconceivable comic a thing.
And I think the fact he's doing it, it's a price that jumps out to me, £1. You know, it's sort of.
It's because you're northern and your pockets are too deep and your hands are too short.
It is, but people sometimes try to, you know, they do clever things, but they put a silly price on it.
Oh yeah, very true.
You know, and you don't feel like you feel like you're paying for their idea rather than the work they've put into it or anything. But it's just, I don't know, it's £1. It's amazing. Yeah, it's a bargain, and I want one. Right, I'm going to do a bit of loving now. Have you ever read any of Jeff Lemire's stuff, Tom?
I think I have. I couldn't actually think of any off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I have read some of Jeff Lemire's stuff. Did he do Sweet Tooth?
I'm not sure. That shows how much useful I am. What I've read recently, I've obviously we've got a nice new iPad, and we're finally into digital world of comics. So
well done.
So the problem I have now is Comixology, and the amount of stuff I buy in a sale is
You're hiding that from me, aren't you?
Yes.
I thought so.
And I saw this book. I hadn't really read anything of Jeff's before, and I saw The Underwater Welder, which looked fascinating. I'm going to give you some blurb to read, Nicole.
No, because then everyone knows how much editing is involved when I read blurb.
No, we can't re-edit it because Tom's on, so we can't do that.
I know, that's what you said to me. And I said, I'm not reading any blurb because I always get it wrong.
Read the blurb.
Okay. As an underwater welder on an oil rig off the coast of Nova Scotia, Jack Joseph is used to the immense pressures of deep-sea work. Nothing, however, could prepare him for the pressures of impending fatherhood. As Jack dives deeper and deeper, he seems to pull further and further away from his young wife and their unborn son. Then one night, deep in the icy solitude of the ocean floor, something unexplainable happens. Jack has a mysterious and supernatural encounter that will change the course of his life forever. I did it!
Well done. Seriously, that usually takes multiple takes.
I really concentrated.
Well, maybe you should try
pressure. That's what it is.
You should try harder in future. This is it's like a pencil drawing comic, done in pure black and white, obviously pencil drawing, and it's basically a story. And this is what pulled me in, because I always get pulled in by things like this, about a father and a son.
Yeah.
And that the father dives he's trying to find treasure, essentially, or anything worth anything. And it's a son dealing with his father dying when he was younger, how that's constantly affected him throughout his life, and then dealing with the fact he's got a newborn child on the way as well. And I think as a father, we've all been there. Tom, are you a father?
No, I'm not.
Lucky you. Stay that way. As a father, we've all been there, and it is a challenge, and it does, especially if you've had an issue or something's gone on in your past with your dad, whether it's good or bad, it does fling around your mind a little bit, and it's there. The story is so beautifully drawn. He does so many sort of silent images throughout as you follow this tale. One of my favourite things about him is he'll use quite a few panels, and he'll fit one picture and split it up into panels, so it looks like you're following the image across, but it is just actually one big picture. It's hard to explain without seeing it, but it's gorgeous, and this whole book really just pulled me in from start to end. And I just sat there on holiday and just like, Nicky, I've read it. I read it.
Sounds good.
It's beautiful. It really is a beautiful book. Comixology had it on sale. I advise, if it gets on sale again, grab it, because it is absolutely gorgeous and it's a lovely tale. But this then brought me in, because obviously then you go on to the bottom and you say, oh, what else has he done? And I didn't realise he was the writer for Black Hammer, which I'd never read.
Ah, that's it.
Have you read any of that?
Yeah, I have. I read a massive omnibus trade recently, actually.
Probably the same time I bought it too, because it was on sale.
yes, it was.
Nicky, give us a blurb for Black Hammer.
Oh no, don't make me do it twice.
Do it.
Oh gosh. Once they were heroes, but the age of heroes has long since passed. Banished from existence by a multiversal crisis, the old champions of Spiral City, Abraham Slam, Golden Gale, Colonel Weird, Madam Dragonfly, and Barbalian?
Yes.
Right. Now lead simple lives in an idyllic, timeless farming village for which there is no escape. But as they employ all of their super abilities to free themselves from this strange purgatory, a mysterious stranger works to bring them back into action for one last adventure.
Now, I'd heard of Black Hammer, but just never read it before. And obviously, as soon as I saw it on offer with Jeff's name, and it's like, right, let's give this a go. I feel like I'm like 5 years out from the rest of the world sometimes with some of these things. But and again, it's his storytelling. It's very slow and very rhythmic in how he writes, I feel. But it just drags you in. You can feel it's been written for your trade, your paper, your weekly releases, the way the story is written and the way it's segmented. But there's something about it that it's just mystical in his writing. It really just drags you in. I don't know how to explain it better than that almost. The art is absolutely gorgeous, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
I can't remember who's done the drawing now. I'm going to have to find out. And what I really loved, if you have the same version as me, it showed you front pages of each comics, and he had different artists with these amazing styles.
I love that.
Oh, it's absolutely,
I love variant covers,
gorgeous. Dean Ormston.
Yeah, Dean Ormston, yeah.
And the whole story just follows this group of ex-superheroes, essentially, stuck in this mysterious farm that they can't escape from. There's a whole town around them, living their lives, and they can't leave this area. Right. But the town feels very backwards. It's probably the best way to say it. They've all got the problems. The funniest is... I'm laughing just thinking about it. The funniest is the little girl that's on.
Oh, she's an older person trapped, isn't she?
Yeah, Golden Gale. She's like a 30, 40-year-old woman who's trapped as a young girl, but with a mind. It's the opposite of Shazam.
The opposite of Shazam.
And some of the context she comes out with, the little kid shouldn't be saying she's sitting at school smoking, couldn't care less about anything, but she's still got to go to school because they've got to follow all the rules or they'll be checked up on. It's a wonderful story. There's another part out now, which I'm going to have to catch up on. But I don't know what else I can say about it. Actually, I loved it that much. What did you think, Tom? How long ago did you read it then? It was fairly recently.
Yeah, it was fairly recently. I was actually really taken in by Dean Ormston's art. Yeah. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But you are right. It's another one. It's a hard one to speak about without kind of spoiling anything. Yeah. But yeah, it is very well very well paced, as you say. But you're right in a way that you said it's written for like the kind of weekly, but it does actually collect really well as well, because you're just able to batter through it so easily. You know what I mean? It's quite a pacey read, even though there's a lot going on. You can get through it quite quickly. But yeah, absolutely beautiful story, and just an absolutely gorgeous art just to accompany it. It's an all-in-oneer. Absolutely gorgeous.
It's years behind like us to catch up on it and get it read.
Yeah.
Get it read. It's amazing. I'm searching now. I'm going to look at all his other work, because I don't often jump onto a writer, but his stuff really, those 2 books have just dragged me in. So my intention is to get him on the show.
Do it.
At some point, if he'll come on. He's one of them with thousands upon thousands of followers on Twitter. You know, he just hasn't got time to respond to people like me. But we can only but try.
You can.
Okay. Right. Before we cut this off, very quickly, I want a 3-word review of Avengers Endgame for those who haven't seen it.
Oh, 3 words.
Go on, Nicole.
Pacey, spectacular, emotional.
Bring some tissues.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely bloody amazing. See, mine's very simple.
I tried to bring in lots.
You did so well that I couldn't even think about trying to beat that. Fair play. Right, so have some segments. We got Pete with Brad Brooks. Sorry, not Brad Bird. That's a different person. That's a director.
That'd be impressive.
Yeah, that would be impressive. But it's more impressive that it's Brad Brooks.
Yes.
Having a chat with Brad. We've got Mike obviously on, and yourself. You're like double episode.
I know. I'm hogging the show.
So what are you talking about?
I am speaking about Alan Henderson's. Oh my God, I've forgotten the name.
Penguin.
Don't Penguin. Don't judge me. The second Treasury edition from Alan Henderson.
Excellent. Right, so enjoy all of that, then come back afterwards, and if you've watched Endgame, come and listen to us talk.
Mike's mutterings.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Mike's Mutterings. And today it's a Hellboy bonanza. On March the 23rd we celebrated the official Hellboy Day, which marked 25 years of the world's most famous paranormal investigator. And what a year it's been for our half-demon wielder of the right hand of doom. One day I always thought I'd love to do a Hellboy 101 and explore the beginnings of Mike Mignola's creation, the evolution of the story and the universe, and maybe look at the hugely complex and multitude storylines and how they weave together and slowly but definitely move towards a definitive ending. But to be honest, I just couldn't do it justice. I'm a huge fan, but my reading has been disjointed over the years, with some miniseries just missed completely or passing me by. The man for that job would be the podcast's very own Pete Taylor, whose encyclopedic knowledge of Hellboy really does know no bounds. I can confirm that Pete said goodbye to fanboy status a long time ago and now firmly resides in obsessive status. Instead, I'll be making this more of a review episode and covering some of the major Hellboy releases. The obvious starting point would be the comics. In preparation for the 25-year anniversary, Dark Horse created a number of omnibus editions and had an aggressive publishing schedule between May and September last year for them. This consisted of 4 omnibus volumes: Seed of Destruction, Strange Places, The Wild Hunt, and Hellboy in Hell. And that covers about 20 years of the main story there, but crucially in chronological reading order, not publishing order. This was followed by a further 2 omnibus editions that collected all the various short stories. These are the short standalone one-shots that appeared in single issues here and there, and they were quite hard to track them all down. So for someone like me who has a disjointed reading history with Hellboy, or, more ideally for a complete noob, these omnibus editions were a godsend. I know they don't compare to the beauty of original single issues with their stunning covers and such, but to have a definitive collection that takes up just 6 inches of shelf space, and that's as opposed to, I'd say, 5 foot of comic storage boxes, well, that's kind of helpful too. You do get some covers reprinted throughout the volumes, and there's some great development sketches in the back too. As a collection, it is superb. I really can't recommend enough. They're the high-quality softbacks that you expect from Dark Horse, and they have already found their place on our household's treasured shelf, and they share space with My Signed Watchman and Tank Girl volumes. I've been keeping up to date with the later miniseries, but still need to get some of the Hellboy and the BPRD 1952 to 1955 stuff, though they are kind of ripe now, I reckon, for being collected into a single omnibus too. Next up for review, well, I guess it's been kind of hard not to notice that there's a new Hellboy film in the cinemas. Alison and myself had a very busy month, and whilst off work this week, we finally managed to just scrape in and see the very last 4:30 showing before Endgame basically took over all screens. An afternoon showing with an audience of about 20 people is never ideal, but however. The reboot was announced back in May 2017, and I keenly followed development throughout. The announcement came, of course, after 3 years of development hell for the originally intended Guillermo del Toro sequel. Original Hellboy Ron Perlman was even brimming with excitement and tweeting all over the place that it was happening. Del Toro himself even leaked that he had the story, and it was going to be about Hellboy and Liz, who had settled down with their twins when an unknown villain threatened to destroy the world. Selma Blair agreed to return as Liz, and Doug, Seth and Jeffrey returning as Abe, Johan and Manning too. With the huge critical success of the first 2 films, this had to be a sure thing, surely. Del Toro, Perlman, box office gold. Well, that's not how Hollywood works, and studio politics, creative differences and egos all conspired against the all-important green light. It seemed complicated at the time, but looking back, I think the crux of it was that Mignola had worked with scriptwriter Andrew Cosby on a script that they actually saw as a sequel to Del Toro's first 2. Del Toro was simply assumed that he would direct, but Del Toro then turned it down because he wanted to direct his own Hellboy story. Perlman also said that he would only reprise his role with Del Toro in the helm. So, a Hellboy in Mexican standoff. So Neil Marshall was brought in as director, hence losing Del Toro, hence losing Perlman. And that led to the decision of a complete reboot. I think I've got that right, but like I said, looking back, it got complicated. I think it's safe to say, though, at this point, the fans were on Del Toro's side, and they wanted an ending to his trilogy. I think the initial fan scepticism slowly ebbed away a bit with the announcement of David Harbour taking on the Hellboy role. Given that it was announced at peak Stranger Things popularity, it wasn't a surprise that it went down well. The casting of Milovich was also positively received, but the real swing was the confirmation of an R rating, something that was only made possible by the commercial success of adult-rated Deadpool. I think what got me personally excited was the first glimpse of Harbour in full prosthetics. They'd made a very important decision here, and that was to make Hellboy a lot closer to the comics. The huge jaw, ugly Cro-Magnon brow, it just clinched it for me. Ugly and gnarled and bright yellow demonic eyes. So my personal expectations were now getting quite high. So when we both walked out of the cinema on that Wednesday afternoon, we do what we always do, and we just look at each other and kind of say, well? The response we both gave probably sums up my review perfectly. We both had wide grins and then nodded enthusiastically. Remember that as we saw this at the end of the run, I had already endured a slew of mostly negative, but thankfully non-spoiling reviews. So those high expectations of mine had crumbled a little before I saw it. But what I felt I saw was a quick-paced, horror-laden return to the comics. It wasn't perfect, but when we discussed the film at length afterwards, there just seemed to be so many positives. Straight out, Harbour was brilliant. It's a more mature Hellboy, with adolescent angst kind of replaced with identity crisis of questioning his place in the world. The supporting cast were also good. I'm so glad that they recast Daimyo with Daniel Dae Kim, because firstly, I think that the Asian American heritage is kind of part of the character. And secondly, because Daniel is a favourite in our household. We absolutely loved Lost, the series. And before you say, I know nobody else does, but hey, it's just one of our things. Ian McShane's Broom was solid, if maybe uninspired choice. He seems to be the go-to older father figure actor, and he just appears everywhere. It didn't help that we actually watched John Wick Chapter 1 and 2 the night before. Miller was good, but Stephen Graham was the real star for me. His character, which I won't spoil who he voices, was the best source of comedy throughout, and his potty mouth made full use of the hard R rating. It won't be giving anything away to say that the story combines several key comic stories, namely The Wild Hunt, Darkness Calls, The Storm and the Fury, and just a sprinkling of Hellboy in Mexico. As a comic fan, first and foremost, I really loved this approach, and we both appreciated that it only gave a cursory nod to the origin story, which I'm glad, because the first Del Toro film is a perfect origin story, and it doesn't need to be retold. The biggest positive for us, though, was something that Alison said to me, and it took me a few moments to realise just how key it was. The horror bits were actually scary. It really was a horror fantasy film, and in this I think it came a lot closer to the comics. Were there problems? Yes, absolutely. Some of the one-liners fell a little flat for me. A common criticism I saw online was the CGI, but I thought, bar one instance, it was really damn fine. It was the physical effects that actually failed for me, and in one aspect, the right hand of doom. A few times it failed to have either the weight or the realism of stone. The prosthetics seemed to lack movement, and sometimes, I don't know, it just didn't look right. In one scene, it looked a bit too much like a cosplay foam accessory, to be honest. The character of Alice was changed from white Irish, and instead African-American actress Sasha was cast. Sasha Lane is a brilliant actress, and she did really well as Alice, but I don't get why they dropped the Irish heritage. She's a good actress. I don't see the problem with doing an Irish accent. The bashing of the storylines got a little frayed in parts, but at least the payoff for this was some superbly jaw-dropping set pieces. There was probably a few other niggles, but there were so many positives and scenes that had us grinning from ear to ear that I kind of forgive them. For the comics fan, there are just so many Easter eggs. There is some important introductions made too. The next film will have a host of fan favourites appearing by the looks of things. And for God's sake, watch to the end credits. And by this I mean the very, very end. And maybe that's another negative. A lot of these kind of Easter eggs are aimed at comic fans, and I think makes the film a little less accessible to the general viewing public. Del Toro's first Hellboy was a huge success because it had general appeal. It had the great plot device of learning the ropes of the BPRD through the new agent Myers, whereas this kind of jumps straight in, and it's right into the chaos from the start. Looking back, I realised a lot of the negative reviewers were from non-comic actual film critics, which they probably just felt a little left out maybe. Ian himself was amused when I referred to these types of reviewers as muggles. In conclusion, in a time where we geeks have truly inherited the earth, and we are spoilt by the likes of Endgame and new Star Wars films left, right and centre, and Game of Thrones on TV, this is still a damn fine film. We're all just a bit spoilt nowadays. And talking of being spoilt, my two greatest hobbies combined. Apart from comics, my other love is tabletop gaming, be that role-playing games, board games or war games. And back in episode 28, I interviewed Rob Berman of Mantic Games just as they were launching a Kickstarter for Hellboy the board game. Of course, I instantly backed, as did the podcast's own Pete, and that was no surprise because it's entirely illustrated using Mignola's own artwork, and a new original work was done by him for the box cover. Both Peter and myself finally received our Kickstarter editions just a few weeks ago, and I managed to delve into the huge core set box and play a few games with Alison over the weekend. The edition from the Kickstarter contained a lot of extra miniatures and plastic tokens that replaced normal cardboard tokens you'd find. And although you don't get those in the retail version, it's basically because they're the rewards for backing the project and helping its development. But the good news is that the core set is now at retail, and you can buy that and also buy the additional plastic counter upgrades and extra dice and all that too. There are still a few Kickstarter exclusives, but they may become available at a later date. I can say that the box contents are really top-notch. Mantic have got really good at high-quality components, and this includes the miniatures. The initial game gives players the chance to play as Hellboy, Abe Sapien, Liz Sherman and Johann Kraus. But fear not, you have access to backup agents like Kate Corrigan, Scott Clark and amongst others, Lobster Johnson too. The game sort of plays as a classic dungeon crawler, but it's split into two distinct phases. Investigation, where you go room to room and fight a variety of minions, whilst searching for clues that will help you in the second phase, the final confrontation. This is where you battle with the final boss villain. The countdown to this final confrontation is handled by the impending doom tracker, and that's advanced by various in-game events and effects. Each game has a specific scenario in the form of a BPRD case file, and 6 are included in the game. But as each game is kind of randomised within the case and you also get to choose your own team, there's just so much replayability with it as it is. Each character has their own unique set of abilities and skills. Hellboy is your brawler and he can throw bits of furniture or even other minions. Liz sets fire to things all over, sometimes a little bit too much, and Johann possesses minions and gets them to fight each other for you, whilst Abe is kind of your stealth hitter. They have unique mechanics that really sell the flavour of each character. I received a PDF of the rulebook prior to delivery, and reading through I realised that, as an experienced tabletop player, the game mechanics had some real crunch to them, meaning that it wasn't just a hack and slash. It was mission orientated, which I like. It was cooperative in that everyone played with each other against the game, and another tick was that there was an element of skill, tactics and resource management to it. But if I had to put my I'm new to all this, what the hell is going on hat on, I thought that the amount of rules you had to plough through could put you off. Luckily, this turned out not to be the case, because the game actually came with a read-me-first book aimed at beginners that really helps you get to grip with basic gameplay quickly. And if you still need it, there's loads of playthroughs on YouTube and some excellent how-to-play videos too. Our first game went very smoothly because of this. I mean this in a gameplay sense, because the actual game was a disaster. We got completely overrun with frog monsters swarming all over us, and frog spawns just mounted up and accelerated the impending doom tracker. It didn't help that Liz kept setting fire to us far too often too. Our first impressions was this was going to be a go-to game for us. It's fast-paced, requires inventive teamwork, and the impending doom tracker really adds a sense of urgency. And the miniatures are brilliant sculpts, and they really capture Mignola's world. And as a miniature painter, I look forward to painting up the whole set. The Kickstarter also allowed you to buy resin versions of some of the figures, and I took advantage of that. I can't wait to find time to start painting, and I'll post progress up on my Twitter account, which is @CthulhuPunk, if you're interested. We only played 2-player games, so really I want to do a 4-player at some point. Though bigger teams does mean that you get less support agents to even it out. What I think is really cool is that the game can be played solo, by simply playing the multiple characters yourself. It's rare that I'm without other tabletop players at hand, but it's nice to know. The game can also be pimped by using 3D scenery, all available from Mantic, and I grabbed some of this as part of the Kickstarter. I see lots of replayability, and there are loads of villains and minions to choose from initially. My first initial gripe was that the case files supplied with the game had very little text and was lacking a little bit of narrative feel. However, there are several expansions on the horizon, and they deal with specific Hellboy story arcs, and they'll be of a much more narrative nature, and have a sort of a campaign feel to them. Overall, the game clearly recreates exactly what you want from a Hellboy adventure, and it lets you immerse yourself in the Hellboy world. Board games based on a specific intellectual property are nothing new, but what Mantic are proving themselves good at is creating a set of rules that encapsulates that IP perfectly. They did the same with the Walking Dead game, and they're fast becoming the company for franchise games. They've had some real success with comic-based games, so hopefully they have a taste now, and we can look forward to more. If you are a Hellboy fan, but new to tabletop gaming, seriously give it a go. It may open up a whole new world of nerd for you. Well, that's it for the Hellboy Bonanza. I'm pretty sure many won't agree with my assessment of the new movie, but I'm always keen to hear people's views. And I'll end this with my favourite Hellboy quote again. "Don't mess with me, lady. I've been drinking with skeletons." Till next time.
Hello everybody and welcome to Small Pressed, the Small Press review section of the Comic Art Festival podcast, with me, Tom Stewart from That Comic Smell podcast. Hello again. Now today we're going to be talking about, I would say, a comic strip giant. Now I don't say these words lightly. When I say things like, oh, these are great, this is the best thing ever, this is amazing, blah blah blah, I really mean it. I mean it from my perspective. Take from it what you will, but in my eyes, this person is an absolute giant of the comic strip. He knows how to work the comic strip amazingly, and he has a brand new book that's coming out very soon. And before we get into that review of his brand new book, which will be coming around about the 3rd of May, let me just give you a little insight into this person. Now, he is behind such titles as Threadbare and Other Stories, Our Friends Arachnid, Sculpted, and of course, the magnificent Guin series. Yes, I am talking about Alan Henderson, and he has a brand new Treasury Edition Volume 2 called Don't Judge Me coming out. It's actually launching in Edinburgh this weekend. So the book launches Friday the 3rd of May between 6 and 9 p.m. at the Whitespace Gallery, 76 East Cross Causeway, Edinburgh. And the exhibition will run all weekend, so that's Saturday the 4th of May. It's open 10 till 5 on the Saturday and 10 till 3 on the Sunday. So let's dive in a little bit. Alan has been writing Penguin for quite a number of years now, and quite expertly, I would say. He's recently just launched the Penguin's sort of own Twitter page, dedicated, because before he was just kind of launching them from, well, he still is, he's launching them from his Twitter, but he's set up his own @Penguin, which is covering a lot of the old strips. He's reposting them up, but it is literally just 3 panel strips, occasionally 4 panels, which are classed as Sunday strips. It's basically the antics of a funny group of penguins, and his latest instalment is called Don't Judge Me. He is launching this book after just having very successfully kickstarted his most recent collection of the strips before that. It's called The Penguin Tension. So that only came like a couple of months ago or something, and now he's launching this brand new Treasury edition off the back of that by himself. No Kickstarter or anything, just launching it by himself and having a gallery of his works up framed, and you can buy them and everything there on the day as well. But Don't Judge Me, the new Treasury edition, his Volume 2, is collecting strips number 500 to 1000, so at the very end you get number 1000. I absolutely adore these strips. They are funny, they are clever. Alan's kept it very, very simple so that he can get them out, you know, bang, 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 one after another. He puts them out daily, and they're just really good fun. They're just so what you need on when you're having a bad day, or if you're just having a total non-plus day. Just read a couple of these, and the fact that he's got them all up on his Twitter, and he's got them up on his dedicated Penguin Tumblr page, penguins.tumblr.com, PENNEDGUINS.tumblr.com. The fact that he's got them coming out daily, I mean, he's up to 1,416 now. You know, you can just batter through loads of them. It's like there's a dedicated page on Twitter to Calvin and Hobbes, and I think Alan and Calvin and Hobbes are two of my favourite sort of Twitter feeds to follow, because it's just nice, fun comic strips daily. No matter what I'm feeling, I will be uplifted when I read these. It's nice. He calls them dad jokes, but I think they're brilliant. Dad jokes are funny sometimes. But they're just these simple black and white one-liners. I'll read you some of them out of the new Don't Judge Me book. It's a really hefty tome as well. It's a nice big sort of A4 sized thick book. When it says it's strips 500 to 1,000, there is about 2 to 4 to each kind of page, strips wise, depending on what he's putting up. If it's some of his sort of bigger strips, like his Sunday strips, he'll put one of them at the top of the page, and then maybe put like one strip at the bottom of the page. You know, he's really battered it out, and he's got some art pieces in between as well. He's done like parodies of films with the penguins in it, or parodies of album covers with the penguins in it. There's superhero kind of parody ones. There's one here that says, "Eating a clock takes ages. It's totally time consuming." I absolutely love these. They're amazing. But the good thing about them as well is that Alan really plays with them. I mean, he takes the strip structure of 3 panels sometimes and really plays with them, puts the penguins outside of the panels, or makes the panels like fall apart, or he does one where it's like the 2 penguins speaking to each other, and he's got just the 4 boxes totally emptied, and they're talking to each other, and he's saying, "Have you considered 2 up and 2 down?" You know, he's like telling you, "Have you considered changing the structure of the panels?" And he really has a lot of fun with it, and it comes across because then it makes for a good comic as well. So Don't Judge Me is split up into sections. These are fun times, aliens, animals, art, writer, circus, doctor, driving, election, family, food and drink, hobbies, holidays, and there's so much more in there as well. He's got like little bits in the inside that tell you what a penguin is, and then he's got the penguin and what it means, like it's written in the dictionary. There's so much going on in here, and at face value, it is just 3 panel strips of penguins. Anything you would find in sort of in a newspaper or something like that, and yet he finds a way to make it new and fresh. I have said before, the penguins stand shoulder to shoulder with the classics of the humour comic strip genre, and I stand by that. Like, I've read a lot of comic strips. It's some of my favourite comics is comic strips. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Calvin and Hobbes, huge fan of Peanuts. The Beano growing up had like comic strips for Minnie the Minx and everything as well. Garfield, Dilbert, Shuggy and Duggy, like they're all big favourites of mine, and I would stand by that. I think Alan should really have these penguin strips within a newspaper. They really should be in there, but more people should have their eyes on these. But also the fact that they're great fun. Like, I could see kids really getting behind these sort of penguin characters. I could see little penguin plushies and t-shirts and stuff like that, because they're just fun and enjoyable and easy characters to grab a hold on. Most of these comic strips have the same thing, that the characters are very simple. Like, Garfield's just a big orange stripy cat. Snoopy's just this black and white. It doesn't even really resemble a dog when you say it. I mean, you know it's a dog, but it doesn't really resemble a dog. And Charlie Brown and whatnot, they're really, really simple in design, so it makes them more accessible for people in the long run. And Alan does a really good job of doing this. But Don't Judge Me, the newest one, in this A4 style as well, kind of reminds me of like having a Beano annual in my hand and something that I could take and hide away under the covers with. It's just that wee bit bigger. He makes these books that are good sizes, and I'd heard it described before that they're good comics for the downstairs toilet, and they're not wrong. They're great comics for a kid to have in like their backpack, or for somebody to have in their downstairs toilet, or have on their coffee table or anything. They're absolutely fantastic. And Alan's just a great creator with a really good wit, a really good mind, and a very intelligent creator to be coming out with these on the regular as well. I really look up to him in that respect as a comics creator, and to be putting something so solidly out like this is just amazing. The penguin on the front of Don't Judge Me as well is sporting a little Tammy hat with a book in his hand saying puns plus more puns, and he's got a stack of books, and one of the books in the stack says The Big Book of Dad Jokes. So it's the Penguin Treasury Edition, Volume 2. I'll read you the little blurb on the back as well. The award-winning Penguin webcomic strip features the fun antics of a funny group of penguins from the pen of writer and artist Alan Henderson. Humour for all ages. Come join us as our penguin friends visit the circus, hold an election, or even go on trial. It's absolutely fantastic. I cannot talk up the Penguin series enough. I highly recommend that you get out there and try and find it in any way possible. But you'll be able to get a hold of Don't Judge Me and be able to come down and meet Alan and come to the gallery and everything this weekend, Friday the 3rd to Sunday the 5th of May. Like I say, the book launch is Friday the 3rd of May between 6 and 9 p.m. and the exhibition is Saturday the 4th and Sunday the 5th, Saturday being between 10 and 5 and Sunday being between 10 and 3 at White Space Gallery, 76 East Cross Causeway, Edinburgh. And you can find Alan either at Penguin, PENNEDGUIN, on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, or at Shadow1972, SHADOW1972. You can also find the strips on penguins.tumblr.com, as I said previously, and you can find copies of his books Don't Judge Me Volume 2, The Penguin Tension, The Penguin The Expansion Pack, which is like a smaller version of what the Tension and his other one, The Big Blue, are. They're more like the Sunday strips just put into like a smaller book. And you can also grab his first Treasury edition, Did You Hear the One About? They're absolutely fantastic books. Brilliant size, brilliantly put together, and expertly thought out. Definitely. Well worth a look. Some of the best comic strips that you can get out there at the minute. I say this hand on heart that Alan is definitely one of my favourite comic creators out there. So that is the Penguin series by Alan Henderson. More to the point, Don't Judge Me, his new book. That's out there now. Go and grab it whilst you can. And that is it from me from the small press section this week. I have been Tom from That Comic Smell. You can find me on Twitter at URAMYX, or at the podcast Twitter, That Comic Smell, at That Comic Smell, on Twitter and Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and most of the places that you find podcasts. Just type in That Comic Smell on Google. Have an absolutely brilliant week, folks, and I will speak to you all soon. See you later.
Howdo, welcome to Breakdowns, the comic art section of the podcast. I'm Pete Taylor. I'm a small press comics creator and illustrator. Online I trade as This Man, This Pete. This episode, I'm chatting to designer, cartoonist, author, and comic scholar Brad Brooks. Hey, Brad, thanks for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, Pete.
Now, comics. Big passion for both of us.
Mm.
Do you remember your first comic?
Well, I mean, the first comic I remember just getting absolutely passionate about was probably Crazy, which was a British comic in the early sort of 70s. No, actually, it's probably around about 1975, something like that. But comics had always been something that I'd grown up with because my mum loved comics. And she bought them for herself. And my dad actually wanted to draw comics. He wanted to draw Western comics. So there were always comics in the house. There were always American comics, that my dad managed to get from somewhere. There were always, British comics. They bought everything that was, between them. And then we had newspapers as well, and then the actual daily comic strips and stuff. So, I grew up with it. It was I couldn't avoid it.
Yeah, newspaper strips were big back then, weren't they? I remember my parents didn't read a lot. I always felt the stranger in the family. I always had my nose in a book or a comic, and I was always reading. But I was the only one in the family that did. I had an uncle who knew about comics because as a kid, there was an army base, Burton Wood. I grew up in Warrington, so there was an American army base. So you knew all the GIs would, they would sling their American comics to the kids. So I had an uncle who, used to chat with me about it, but I was the only one in the family that read comics. So it's something that stayed with you. So you're still a regular comics reader now?
I am indeed, yeah. I read a lot of stuff in print, and I read a lot of stuff digitally. A lot of the things that come out on a regular basis, I'll read digitally, and then I'll wait till they're collected and I'll buy them in print. But yeah, I read stuff from all over the world as well. I'm one of these people who kind of taught themselves how to read in a number of different languages, not brilliantly, but enough that I can get by just so I knew what was happening. And I'm basically I'm a comics obsessive. So if it's anything to do with comics, I'll read it. So I am still a regular reader.
Digital has been a huge boon, hasn't it? The fact that you can read them now on your device, or just find certain books that instead of having to look in books or get a second-hand copy, the more and more of the back libraries of publishers like Fantagraphics is such a great avenue to just centuries of comics nowadays. It's crazy.
We're living in a golden age. We really are. And I just think, this is the thing that, back years ago when I first started getting into comics, I had, I dreamt of a world where you could walk down the street reading a comic and nobody would laugh. Where comics were looked upon as art. And we're not completely there yet, but we're so much more there than we ever were. And that to me is just fantastic. So, yeah.
That is interesting because, my girls, my two daughters, find it really interesting that there was such a stigma against comics when I was growing up. They've grown up in the post-manga world, where certainly for them, to adolescent teenage girls, manga was a huge part of their early life and was something that was shared in their friendship group. Whereas it was a very long time before I met any friends, really. It was secondary school before I came across a friend who had, I think it was one of the Howard Chaykin graphic novels, and he brought that. Once we started talking and finding out that we had this joint passion, we would then we'd be passing kind of like brown envelopes at the back of the class so that people wouldn't see and snatch. Oh, what have you got there? Snatch it off your comics. What? I mean, that was what it was like, wasn't it? They were
exactly. Yeah. I mean, when you're in primary school, there were people who had comics, and they'd bring them into the playground and stuff. Particularly kind of the British Humour Weeklies or whatever, or Warlord or whatever. But as you got older, it wasn't until again, as you say, I entered secondary school that I met anybody who felt even remotely the way I did about comics. And then they didn't feel exactly the same way as about me. They liked them, but they weren't like, I remember my regular kind of thing was every Saturday I would get on my bike and I'd go to every newsagent in the area.
Yeah.
And I would basically, I wouldn't buy sweets, I wouldn't buy whatever. I had a job during the week, so I'd save up my money and I'd just spend it all on comics. And, it wasn't until, secondary school I met anybody that even felt remotely the same way. So, for kids, I tell my daughters that now and they're like, yeah, but comics are everywhere. They were, Well, they were, but they weren't. It was really weird kind of, dichotomy. They were everywhere. You could go to any newsagent and there would be a rack of comics, but then there wasn't the kind of almost like the fanaticism and the kind of I don't know whether that's the right word, but the kind of the passion for them that there is now. There were with some people, obviously, yourself and me, but for other people, they were just like they were there. They were just part of the furniture of life.
Yeah,
and there's good and bad on both of those, but I just for me it was just
there was a kind of a kind of geek brigade that formed in my school. So I was into comics, and then I met friends who were into fantasy novels, or then it was Dungeons and Dragons, and then you would all kind of get a similar feel for you might have dipped your toe into one of their areas a little bit, but then you all kind of shared your interests. So we'd all go to, say, Manchester at the weekend on the train with some of our work money, and then you'd spend the time at the comic shop or Games Workshop or the book shop, and you'd all end up kind of sharing your interests a little bit. But you're right, with the golden age now of having everything available, and the small press boom, really, the fact that you've got festivals and cons that allow people to put their own creative works on a table in front of them, I think is another side of this golden age that is really growing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, back years ago, I remember the first convention I went to was in, they had a Marvel Comics convention. I think it was 1980, and that was the first one I went to. And then, you then had like Comic-Con 81 and things like this. But it was really, they were small. You'd get maybe 200 people there. And then you had UCAC every year, and that was a step up again. But now it's kind of like, the model now for festivals and stuff is stuff like Ungulem. I remember the first year I went to that, which was in 1990. That was like, it was mind blowing. The fact that it took over this entire town, and it was, in every shop window there were comics, and then people were, cartoonists were fated as being real artists, and it was everywhere. That was just amazing. And now that's coming back over here into America and stuff like that. And I just think this cross-cultural kind of pollination of comics and the whole kind of the culture around it, I think is just terrific. And I can't. My excitement for comics has never diminished. It's just got bigger and bigger and bigger as the years have gone on.
Yeah. I mean, I often wonder, what is it about comics that grabbed me and wouldn't let go? And, I think when you consider things like festivals and the Lakes Festival itself, that brings this different wave of creators from different parts of the world, and you've got, the small presses in the clock tower. There's I think the only thing that I kind of end up coming to the conclusion is that immediacy, really, that comics brings. It's that the fact that when you open a comic, you are flooded with imagery, and you get a real sense of atmosphere or style from the page immediately, which you don't through prose, and you might get it through a movie and TV, but it tends to be slower. But the impact that you can get from that printed page, the fact that you can have a flick through and get such an immediacy and impact over, a different amount of space according to the artist and how they want to use it. I'm constantly surprised at the fact that it doesn't diminish for me really the passion and the love.
I think for me, I mean, the whole kind of is that anybody can do it. You know, you need a piece of paper and a pencil, and you can impart. You can tell things about your own life. You can make up utterly fantastic things that until, relatively recently, you could replicate in a movie. You can do all of these things. All you need is a piece of paper, a pencil, and the will to actually do it. And then, and that's why I think, again, the small press has always been part of comics. Certainly when I got into fandom, small press was something that was, amazing to me, that there were all these. And it's like meeting those like minds, people who just, you do this as well.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, But I think now it's become such a thing that, it used to be when you went to a comic mart or a convention, there would be Paul Gravett and the fast fiction table. And then you'd go in there and you'd give him 5 copies of your comic and whatever, and he would sell it. Now, all of these, I look around at the lakes and stuff and Fort Bubble and all of these kind of different these things. And there are people and they're getting their own tables and they're doing their own banners and they've got all of this and they're passionate. And it's, last year at the lakes, I sat next to these guys and they were just, it was fantastic to watch what they were doing and how they were doing it. And, and such, they obviously they're all a lot younger than me, but it was the confidence they had, to do this and get it out there. I just think, wow, it's everything that I dreamed of, years ago. It's all coming to fruition. And it's just, I can't put into words how gratifying it is.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Well, let's move on to your spotlight artist because I do love having people on with and finding out who they're going to choose. And I knew it was only a matter of time before somebody chose this guy. So if you tell the listeners who you've chosen.
Well, it was kind of a hard choice because there maybe 3 guys that I could have picked as being, the ones who really kind of influenced me. And those were from the British side of comics. You've got Leo Baxendale, who's God among comics, for anybody of a certain age, he is British comics. You had from Belgium, Andre Francan, who is just a marvellous cartoonist. And had so many different periods in his career where he did different things. And he was just a consummate professional, but also he knew the power of comics. But I think that the one that really kind of was the guy that made me sit up even at a very early age and go, there is real power in this, was Harvey Kurtzman. And, he has got, he did these amazing things. He did these really iconic humor comics, but he could also do war comics that were really moving. He could do gags. He could do, he could draw, he could write, he could edit. He was the whole package. And also as well, something that some people maybe forget was that he was an amazing supporter of cartoonists as they were going up, as they were, he basically, people like Spiegelman and Crumb and people like that, no matter what you think of Crumb now or whatever, but, he was really influential in getting these guys to actually do comics, and then he supported them on their way up. He taught at the School of Visual Arts, and there are so many different people who were taught by him who then went on to do their own brilliant comics. And also back in his past, he was really good friends with René Goscinny, who was the guy who created Pilote in France, this amazing magazine that really brought comics to the attention of adults in France, and of course Asterix. And there's a very, very good case for saying that in Franco-Belgian comics, René Goscinny is probably the most important person who ever lived, because without him you wouldn't have people like Mobius, you wouldn't have Drouillet, you wouldn't have all of these guys, Britisher, Gottlieb, all of these kind of things. You wouldn't have had L'Echo de Savans, you wouldn't have had, Metal Allant, you wouldn't have all of these amazing comics that launched so many careers. And Kurtzman was really, he was influential in getting Goscinny to kind of continue doing comics even back then. So for me, he's just he's a Renaissance man. He's the Leonardo da Vinci of comics as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's one of those names, isn't it? That once you start reading outside of comics, and once you start reading interviews, or once you start reading histories, it's a name that crops up and just doesn't go away, really, in terms of influences and in terms of, ideals. So what was the first Kurtzman that you actually, how did you find him? What was your route to him?
My route to him basically was Ballantine, who was an American publisher of paperbacks. They brought out a series of reprints of the old Mad comics. And my mum had a copy of the Mad Reader, which was probably the first one they did, or maybe, it was the first one. And she also had Inside Mad as well, which I think was about the third one. And I remember coming across these at home one day and just being blown away. The first strip that I can remember that he did with Will Elder, that which just was Mickey Rodent, which was this parody of Disney. And at the time, as a small child, I was kind of always fascinated by Disney and by, Mickey Mouse. Mm-hmm. Seeing, Mickey Mouse as this, sort of this guy who was very manipulative and ends up putting Donald Duck in a cage because he thinks that, Donald Duck is trying to take his limelight. It was just like, I remember reading this and I was just like, what is this? And, to be honest, when I first read it and the Howdy Doody strip that he did with Will Elder as well, I remember being kind of frightened by it. Yeah. And, this imagery that was just so close to the kind of what it looked like, but it had an intent behind it that was, I didn't know what satire was then. Mm. And I'm being kind of, I don't know if I should look at this, I'm putting it away, but then sneaking back and look at it and stuff. And then, my mum found out I was reading it. She's like, read it. It's great. And after that, it was kind of, then it was, I want to read more of this. I want to read more. And of course, the thing with Kurtzman was the unfortunate, probably the thing with Kurtzman is that he didn't get the fairest deal from people. He wasn't the greatest businessman. He wasn't like a Will Eisner, who was a fantastic businessman as well as a great cartoonist. He was he was almost naive in a lot of the dealings he had. And so trying to find Kurtzman stuff was actually quite hard until, probably until I got into my, later teens. And then you start getting the Ross Cochran reprints of the Mad and of Two-Fisted Tales and Frontline Combat. And then it was just like, it was just single-minded. I've got to read everything this guy's done, and that leads on to then, later with Humbug and Trump and,
Yeah, I think with me it would have been, I read a lot of Mad, but when I was reading it, I don't think I, noticed who was doing what. You noticed it was different. You noticed the almost sort of savagery to the art that made it stand out. There was an intensity to their kind of figures and to their, expressions that made it stand apart. But by the time I was getting to, like you say, my sort of late teens, when I had a job and I was able to then spend my wages in the comic shop, that was really when I think I discovered, EC comics, like you say, with Frontline Combat and with Two-Fisted Tales. I didn't read the horror title so much, which actually that was the
really had nothing to do
DC with that he had didn't like, really, did he? He didn't have time for the horror stuff. But for that adventure and those war tales, I mean, I've got the collection, the Corpse on the Imjin collection of his war stories. And one thing that I didn't realise till I'd read up on that was the control that he had over his stories. I mean, he would storyboard and supply layouts to people like John Severin, wouldn't he, and Alex Toth. And
Severin didn't mind, but Toth hated it. Famously did not get on. The other person who didn't get on with him was Bernie Krigstein.
Yeah.
He did, Krigstein did a couple of comics with Kurtzman, and was just like, I mean, the famous one that he did was the one he did with Will Elder, and which was the Bring Out Father parody, the old McManus strip, Geo McManus strip. And they did this really, and it was kind of like they did, Will Elder did the cartooning that looked like George McManus's artwork, and then Krigstein did what would really happen. You know, if you had this guy being being beaten with a rolling pin, this guy would be blooded and, sort of. And so Krigstein did the realistic stuff, and Elder did the thing, and that was just like, wow. But Krigstein hated it. He was like, no, I can't be told what to do. I have to do this. I have to. You look at Krigstein. Krigstein was an auteur. He really was. And so having two auteurs butt heads, it's never going to work that great. And it was the same for Toth as well. Yeah,
I think there were certain people that didn't need the help, so it really was more of him controlling his story, wasn't it, really, rather than getting the best out of his artists. I mean, I do remember as well that it was part of the problem really with Kurtzman's stories was he would spend so long researching them and controlling them that really he wasn't particularly making a particularly good living out of it, was he, really?
In fact, he only really started making a better living when he gave up doing those and went mad at the time. So
yeah, which was probably one of his well, certainly for EC as a whole, Mad was, the saving grace of the company, really, wasn't it? If it wasn't for Mad, there wouldn't be EC carrying on. So I mean, his strengths, obviously, when you look at it, I mean, the figures are just so dynamic when he's producing his own stories. The intensity that he manages to get in his stories, is that something that that's obviously his strengths? Are there any other sort of strengths?
Yeah, I think the thing with Kurtzman is, again, before we started recording, we started talking about kind of, for me, the platonic ideal of comics is one person doing them, writing and drawing. It's that vision of one or maybe two people where, they're both on the same wavelength, or it's one person doing it, and it's controlling everything. And I think that's his strength, was that he was a cartoonist. He could do the writing and the drawing. His weakness, obviously, was the fact that, he was hell to work with if he wanted to have any kind of, say in how the story went. When he was working with people like Will Elder and even Wally Wood, they were quite happy for him to say, put this here. And then they would work around him. You think of Super Duper Man, all the sight gags and stuff that Wood put in. And Will Elder just did that all over the place. He called it chicken fat, which was this these little things that you put in the corners. And, Kurtzman would let them do that as long as they put forward what he wanted to. And in later years, and I think it even started back then, Kurtzman had this amazingly intricate way of doing comics. He would draw in, with a lead pencil, and then he'd put a piece of like sort of tracing paper over the top, and he'd go with a red pencil, and then he'd change it, and then he'd go over and he'd do it in a blue pencil, and he'd have layers and layers of these kind of tracing paper things where he would hone down what he wanted, and then he would give that to the artist, and they would be like, okay, well, you've basically drawn it. So I think that was his real weakness, was that he didn't really know when to go, you know what you're doing, you do it.
Yeah, especially with certain artists, definitely, yeah.
But I mean, his strength was that his stuff, had a real power. It was funny. His humor comics were funny, which, is rarer than we'd like to think, really. They were absolutely. Plus, he also, he basically kind of, and other people have said this, he basically created a type of satire which still persists to this day, where he would take, he'd look at these things and he would twist it, he'd give it just a little skew. And, that influenced so many people in all kinds of walks of life, not only cartoonists. We're seeing that even now, with people, with comedians and stuff who are taking something that he really kind of pioneered and putting it into their own kind of, their own art. So I mean, for me, his strengths are that he's this fantastic auteur. I'd say that again. It's a really poncy word, but it fits. He had this vision, he had this, but there are pros and cons to that. And I think that made him almost kind of, because he had this fallible side, it made him more of a kind of, he did have, feet of clay, to an extent, in that he didn't know when to let go, and he didn't know when, he made some bad business decisions. He decided he was quite famous for throwing his toys out of the pram. I think of Mad, when, he went to Gaines and said, I'm doing this, and, I've helped you, and, you basically, you would have lost everything if it wasn't for Mad, and I demand 3/4 of it. And Gaines just went, no, there are other writers, there are other artists, they weren't him, but, now it continues. So, he wasn't, he definitely had feet of clay. But I think that makes him more of a, for me, that makes him more of a kind of an almost heroic figure, because he's got this side of his personality where he was. I just remember reading one story. I think it was in the Comics Journal. They did a big interview with him years and years ago, and he said that when he started working with Hugh Hefner on Playboy and the little Annie Fanny stuff, which we haven't touched upon, but that's probably quite a good thing, because the Annie Fanny stuff was actually fairly crap. But it had its good points, but it was really, it was what it was. It was a product of its time and of the kind of who he was working for and whatever. But he told this story that Hef flew him out to the Hef mansion and stuff, and he was on a private plane, on a private jet, and they gave him a satellite telephone, which was really new technology then. And he called home. He called his wife Adele. He said, "Hey Adele, guess where I am? Oh, I'm on a plane." And she just went, "When are you home? Because the bins need putting out." And it's that kind of that whole kind of that shtick, if you like. I think it's just endears him as a human being as well as this fantastic creator.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I remember reading, I got my Art of Harvey Kurtzman out to flick through before the interview, and one of the bits I'd forgotten was his wife, Adele. She used to work for Stan Lee.
Yes.
As his secretary, didn't she? So apparently, I mean, Stan was doing this all the way through his career at Marvel, but you would always ask the readers a lot, and he made a full-page ad saying something like, "You be the editor," and he was asking the readers what their favourite parts of Marvel comics were. I think it was about 1946, and he gave Adele the task of collating the results. And she was going out with Harvey Kurtzman at the time. Yeah. So she basically stuffed the ballot to say that Harvey's pages were one of the most popular parts of Marvel. Yeah, that was it. Hey, look, was it? And consequently, Stan Lee gave him a lot more work because she'd stuffed the ballot, basically. So and that was right at the start of his career, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've mentioned. I didn't read Little Annie Fanny. It's one of the portions of his career. I'm more familiar with his EC work. So we've mentioned Mad and EC. Are there any other sort of classic works or recommended titles?
When he left EC, he formed it's almost like a collective with Will Elder and Arnold Roth and a few other people, and they put together a kind of a self-published magazine called Humbug, which is pretty amazing. It's kind of what Mad would. It's almost like looking at what Mad would have turned into had he stayed at Mad. Again, very, very sophisticated, very kind of adult, sort of satire. And it had other stuff in it, it had articles in it as well as comics. But the comics are always the real centerpiece of it, because that was what he was about. And again, Fantagraphics, who God bless them, they reprint all this stuff. I don't know whether they make any money at it, but thank God that they do it, because without them, so much of this stuff would be lost. You know, they reprinted the whole lot as this big, massive package, which is just fantastic. And there's a lot of historical stuff in there, so you can read, you know, sort of some history behind what, you know, how it happened, and you know, talking to people like Arnold Roth and stuff like that who are still with us, you know, talking about that kind of time. He also then, you know, started getting involved with Hefner, and he originally did 2 issues of a magazine called Trump, which, you know, has other connotations now because of a certain orange person who's head of the free world, apparently. But this was kind of like a glossy magazine. It was the same kind of format as Playboy, but obviously it wasn't full of naked women and articles. It was full of comics. And, you know, he basically, you know, Hefner gave Kurtzman, also Kurtzman thought, free reign to do whatever he wanted. But, you know, Hefner was a frustrated cartoonist himself. So he kind of had the final veto, which I think really, you know, it annoyed Kurtzman quite a lot. That, you know, he you know, Kurtzman was kind of promised, yeah, you can do what you want. You have an unlimited budget. You can employ who you like. And it kind of, that was a, you know, for Kurtzman, I think that was almost the final kind of thing that broke him. And he then went on to do Little Annie Fanny with a number of different people, fantastic cartoonists, you know, obviously Will Elder and then all the other people that he worked with it on. But really stuff that, you know, he knew that was pretty much beneath him, but he just needed to make the money because it paid incredibly well. And at the same time, that also freed him up that he could, you know, promote people. He could bring people in, and certainly in you know, Humbug and Trump, he brought people like Terry Gilliam was one of his assistants. Humbug had, you know, these photo strips as well. And, you know, one of the people in that was John Cleese. That's how John Cleese and Terry Gilliam met. Sure. All of these kind of different branches out into popular culture that you know, is just amazing that he was there. And he also brought in, you know, he also promoted, you know, comics from France and stuff like that. You know, he reached out to Goscinny and saw what was happening, Pelot saw what was happening there. And all through his life, you know, right up until the end, he was still fascinated by comics. And, you know, that to me is, you know, that's the mark of that. He knew that this was his art, you know, and he was amazing within it. And I just, you know, you can't help but wonder what if Hefner hadn't, you know, sort of like been the way he was. What if Gaines wasn't, you know, if Gaines had actually given in and gone, okay, Harvey, yeah, you're right, you know, we wouldn't survive without you. You know, you have 3/4 of it. Would it continued? Maybe not. You know, maybe that Kurtzman may run it into the ground, but you don't know. There's all those kind of things about the man's career that you think, well, you know, what if?
So, has he influenced you and your work?
Yes. I mean, you know, I'd be lying if I said he hadn't. But my own strips, I just, they're an amalgam of all different influences that I've had over the years. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a cartoonist that hasn't influenced me. You know, there's so many people that, you know, I've kind of boiled down. The whole British side, the whole European side that I'm really into, Argentina, you know, and then, but Kurtzman, yeah, he is a definite influence in the way that he had a vision for comics, I think is something that really kind of hit with me. And, you know, I do humour comics, so I can't help but be influenced by him. And, you know, I think, but the influence that Kurtzman has stretches far beyond, you know, what I draw like and whatever. It's a mindset. It's a kind of you know, that kind of the fact that he published and he edited and, you know, I've published and I've edited and, you know, it's that whole kind of, you know, you look at it and it's, yeah, back there he's always in the back of my head as being this, you know, this ideal of what a cartoonist can do. Yeah,
I know what you mean. There's certain people that you think of for certain aspects, I think, of your creation or of your comic making. I think there's certain people that I think of when I'm doing my layouts and trying to get my storytelling correct. I think Toth would be one. I think Kurtzman would be another. You know, when I think of absolutely clear point of storytelling, I do think of his EC work in particularly. And then in terms of then putting perhaps a twist on your storytelling and using more unique viewpoints, you know, I think of Toth. And then I think of other creators then when I'm coming down to putting my blacks on, or when I'm doing visuals for expressions, or, you know, it's difficult sometimes even keeping your consistency, because there are that many people that can influence you. By the time you've gone on to the next page, perhaps you've taken it too far in. Now, I know as we're talking about work, we've both recently taken a bit of a plunge into digital cartooning. And I've seen you posting stuff on Instagram, and I find it very intriguing because it is quite a strange change from using pen and paper. So how have you been finding that?
I think a bit like you, really, in that it's one of those things that I think, you know, I've always had a Wacom tablet, but I've always had the one where you draw, you look straight ahead and you're drawing, and you kind of, it's that disconnect of what you're doing and what your eyes are looking at. So it's never been anything that I really wanted. You know, I had one for doing, because obviously my day job as a graphic designer, I have to cut photographs out and do masking and stuff like that. So, you know, you can do that kind of thing. But drawing, to actually draw something, it's slightly, for me, I could never really get the hang of it. No. And so I started doing I'm currently designing a 500-page book on a quite famous pop star. It was a rock star, really. And there's so many photographs in that, and they've all got to be cut out, and they've all got to have intricate masking, and I've got to do all kinds of stuff. So it was like, okay, I'm going to buy a Cintiq. You know, I've been one for ages, but I can actually justify one. But in the back of my head is, that's that. But what I can really use it for is drawing comics. And so, you know, I got one, and I love it. I've got to say, I absolutely love it. That whole thing of you're looking at what you're drawing on a computer, and you're actually looking at and drawing. It's like paper. It's fantastic. However, and this is a bit of a however, there is a tendency, and I mean, you know, I don't know whether you use Clip Studio Paint, but Clip Studio Paint is this fantastic piece of software that I have actually fallen completely in love with. You know, I have a constant fight in my day job with Adobe's products, because I use these products all the time, and you know, I pay them a lot of money every month just simply to swear at a screen. Why have you crashed again? But this piece of software is just, you know, it's meant to do illustration, it's meant to do comics. That's what it's meant to do, and it is a fantastic bit of kit to actually work on, because, you know, I just think about it, you know, when I was a kid, when I was drawing, you know, it's like perspective, and it's really hard. With Clip Studio Paint, you can set up rulers, and every line you draw will be in perfect perspective, and that's just like, you sit back and go, wow,
it's magic.
Blowing. Yeah, it is magic. But at the same time, I found that, you know, because the way I do my comics normally is I do them in these little sketchbooks, okay, little A6 sketchbooks, and I do them with, you know, obviously I go between different materials, because I've always been I'm listening to you talking to Nick Prolex, and you know, that whole thing about, you know, looking for the perfect pen, looking for the that's been a search of mine. And I remember reading comics journal, like, what pen do they use, what brush, you know, and all.
Still do that.
Yeah, absolutely, I still do. I love anything. I love talking about pens and brushes and paper, and so, you know, okay, I'm going to use. And when I first started them, I bought just a fountain pen, a Flex fountain pen made by Noodlers, really cheap, called an Ahab, which, you know, if you put a bit of pressure on, it's not like a dip pen, but it gives you a little bit of line variation. I bought one of these and I started inking in that, and it was almost like Dave Sim years and years ago did a thing called the Cerebus Guide to Self-Publishing, and one of the things that I took from that, Dave Sim is a very, I don't want to get into Dave Sim, but
no, it's a whole other episode now.
Absolutely, yeah. But, you know, he said something that has always stuck with me. It's like, if you want to do comics, you've got to get out of your own way. And that really stuck with me. And I remember when I first started doing the whole Les Cartoonist Andres stuff, and I remember seeing Charlie Adler, you know, and Roger Langridge, and these people who were doing comics for a living, and they would be in their studios, they would have calendars, and every day they'd have page something, page something. They would do a page, and I'm looking at that and going, I can't do that. I draw when the fancy takes me, and if I don't want to draw, then I can't. So it's like, maybe I can't do this professionally, you know. And I have done it professionally. I've drawn comics professionally. You know, when all the Viz stuff was, you know, all the knockoffs, I drew for a number of those. Terrible stuff. But you know, I drew for, but even then I looked at it, I can't do this. This is really, you know, it's difficult. So when I started doing comics again, because I needed something to do that wasn't on the computer, which is ironic, seeing as what we're talking about, it was like, okay, how can I do this where I get out of my own way? I know I'm going to do it with a fountain pen, I'm going to do it in little sketchbooks, and that's what I'm going to do. That was brilliant. But obviously that thing that gets into your head, I wonder what it'd be like if I used a brush pen, or I wonder if it would be like, you know, if I had to use a proper dip pen. So I bought G pen nibs, and then I bought, you know, and the current thing I'm inking with at the moment is a Tombow Fudanowski pen, which is one of these little which I learned from Dylan Horrocks, and he inks everything with one of these, and they're brilliant. They're really cool. And unlike the bigger ones that they do, the nib lasts for quite a long while. They're big ones. They do the dual tip ones. Literally, that will last for like 10 minutes before the nib just goes like that. And it's terrible. But so, you know, there's kind of all that. And then I got this. The thing I really liked about doing this in a little sketchbook and stuff was the immediacy and the way that I didn't care about what my line looked like, and I didn't really care about, I mean, I did to an extent, but not enough that it made me freeze and go, I can't do this, which was the problem when I was doing things on A3, you know, proper Bristol board and with a proper dip pen and all that kind of stuff. The thing with the Cintiq and Clip Studio Pro is it makes it so easy to kind of go, that line's wrong, Command Z. That line's wrong, Command Z. You can spend hours trying to get the right line. And then when you've done it, I've looked at it and I like it, but then I look at it a couple of days later and I think, that looks really sterile. It looks really, the lines are so perfect and so, and that to me is like the real kind of downside of, but the positive side of it is, you know, for color work, you have this infinite range of colors that you can just pick, and you know, you can do really fancy effects. You can do all of the kind of the weird cut coloring with lassos, or you can just literally paint or whatever. It's brilliant for that, you know. But at the same time, it's kind of, I don't know. It's almost like, you know, it's the whole thing like between digital and print. I still love print. I love, you know, the smell of books, and I love the feel of books. And while I love my iPad and I love, you know, reading stuff digitally, there is something about the tactileness that doesn't quite come across in electronic stuff. And I don't know whether that's because I'm old, but
I think it's when you've seen, you know, when you've read as many, when you've looked through as many things, and you are aware of, you know, line quality. I think that's what I found when I got at least a Wacom Studio, the mobile version of the Cintiq, just because I knew I didn't want to spend all day in front of the computer. So I quite fancied, you know, being able to move it around and do it in the living room and, you know, amongst the house life. But the principal advantage I immediately found with it was like infinite tracing paper. You know, I'm not somebody who can necessarily draw something straight off. I tend to struggle, you know, I tend to work, I tend to, you know, really, you know, have to, certain positions I tend to really have to knuckle down and grind a certain panel out. And when I was using paper, that would either end up being multiple versions of layout paper, tracing paper, and then when I would scan it in, and then I might manipulate it in Photoshop, and it was quite laborious. So I really looked forward to getting the Cintiq so that I could have infinite tracing paper, essentially. So you just do a new layer, trace over the top, fix it a bit more, tweak it like you would in Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I thought that was what it was going to be for me. I thought that I'll just draw in it, and then I'll print it out and ink it. And I'll carry on working that way, because I was aware over the years when I did see work from favourite artists, I felt I could tell when they were working traditionally and when they were working digitally.
Yeah.
And it was still them, and you still admired it, but there was a kind of soft focus, or I kept thinking of it as like slightly plasticky-ness to some, not everyone's. There were some people that I was actively surprised.
Yeah.
And there's some people like Nick Dragotta. I find his artwork from East of West, it's all digital, doesn't exist physically. It's outstanding. It is its own thing, and there are certain artists, but there would be some artists that I felt I could see that they were inking digitally, and I thought, I don't want that. I want my nice crisp, and I want my quality line, and I want to use all my pens that I've been buying and still buy. But what I did find, and what it was a big surprise to me, was that the advantage I found when I did try inking digitally was I got over this sort of analysis, or this paralysis that I used to give myself when I was inking, because it was finite, and because that line mattered, and because that choice of where you were going to put the black. You could put white out, and you could cut out the panel and do it all again. But again, that was laborious, and that was why I heard it being described on a podcast as paralysis through analysis. I would be sat there contemplating what I was going to do in such a way that it would stop the flow, and it would, like you say, I was getting in the way of myself, essentially.
Yeah.
Dave Semp had said. And I did find that in the same way that I was free with infinite tracing paper, this infinite ink that I got meant that I would experiment and try things out and slap it around on the page with a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
And also the fact that a lot of the time my workspace is a mix of my design, illustration, and it's not really a physical workspace anymore. So I wouldn't be slapping white paint onto things. It wasn't that kind of studio. It was still a computer sort of setup. But now that I've got this sort of digital system, you can white it out over the top. You don't have to worry about what materials you're using. So I do find
you find yourself inking something time and time again, because I found that certain things I've gone. Yeah, I think that what would happen if I inked that with a different type of brush?
Yeah,
and it's almost like it's brought the play back.
Yeah, definitely, and also just the brushes. I mean, again, much like when you're buying your brushes, I bought the Frendon.
I bought all of that. Yeah.
And how many's in there? Like 400.
Yeah.
So literally, I tried. I thought, how am I going to choose? And no joke, I must have spent like 3 days, not all hours every day, but I tried every single brush in a multi-layered document, and I just tried a little squiggle. I tried to draw just a little doodle, and I put the name of the brush.
Yeah.
And there was some that I had an instant affinity with, and there was some that I hated right off the bat. And I kind of made a little note. I think I put them in some folders, and it was all quite organised for me, which But I ended up then with just a few brushes at the end of it that I wanted to explore further and wanted to try out a bit more. But I did find that when it's finished, it still has that slight thing that I don't like.
Yeah.
But the freedom I gained to get there made it better than if I'd have inked it physically.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I think my ideal is that I'm going to build up my confidence digitally inking to the sort of stage where I can go back to physically inking things with more freedom, because I've had the digital confidence build up, really, because I do want to go back to doing it physically, and I do feel there are some especially there's some sort of technical repo problems I find with Clip Studio. The fact that it doesn't support CMYK is a constant headache for me.
Biggie.
It really is, so to the extent that I've played around with the colour, and it's lovely to paint on. But
it shifts if you print it.
Oh, it's and also this another problem I had. You've got, when you're doing a physical page, you have a relationship set in your mind between the physical size of your artwork and the physical size it's going to come out with.
Yeah.
When you're blowing your digital page up and down in size all the time, it's really difficult to, is this the right line weight?
Yeah.
Am I doing this? I've blown it up to this size, and I'm doing my page, half up. Even digitally, I still do that just out of habit. And then, but the relationship in my mind to the printed page has kind of disappeared because it doesn't stick.
Yeah. And that again is one of those things that's so marvellous about it, but also really so infuriating because and it's like, I could do these little lines that will never print. Never. It will just go, and you'll get this big blob of black, and it's just So
it's like with some of shaking stuff now, you can see that he's drawn it quite big, but then he's just shrunk it down, and so you end up with quite a small street scene. Yeah. But the characters don't look like they were drawn at that size. They look like they were drawn large and kind of shrunk.
Throw it down,
Yeah, you can kind of tell. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't bother me that much. But I did actually. I went to Sean Phillips' signing at the Page 45 room in the Lakes last year.
Yeah.
And I knew that he'd been working all digital on Kill or Be Killed. So I thought, I'll ask him then, So I said, all right, I know you're working digitally at the moment. How do you handle the fact that your page isn't a physical size? And he was like, oh, yeah, that really got me. And, I found that difficult to handle. He said, but all you've got to do, I think he said, all I did was, he said, I just chose a sort of size and stuck with it. And then you have to kind of see how it works out. And then once you've worked through, I think, the first lot. So in other words, I think once you'd kind of finished the first lot and printed it, then you take a view, is that, kind of what I want? But I suppose it is another example of not getting in the way of yourself. You just got to do it.
That's a great way of looking at it, I think. Because you're imposing a constraint on yourself, which is the same as you have when you're working on paper. But because normally you don't have that constraint because you can blow things up or whatever. I think that's a great way of looking at it, going, okay, well, it's never going to get any bigger. I'm not going to blow it up. I'm going to do it. If you can't see it at that size, that's it. That's it. So, yeah.
Then you got the wobble.
That's the thing. And I mean, the great thing about Clip Studio as well, you've got this stabilization thing you can turn on. But I think that's what makes it look plastic.
Exactly. I tweaked the one I was using because, mine, when you first start drawing it, it just looks wobbly. And you think, it doesn't look that wobbly when and even little things like getting used to the fact that you've got no resistance on the screen. So you haven't got that, the sort of slight fight against the paper. But, the problem then, if you try and draw the same size, is that you either go full on sort of stabilized and it looks perfect and it looks a bit more like something, say, from Illustrated, and it looks a bit too sort of vectory. Yeah. Or you end up looking like, you're half cut and you're just wobbling all over. Just a bit of drinking. It's really interesting. I love it. I absolutely love it. But I do, yes, it's weird. It's teaching me things about drawing again, I suppose, which I am appreciating. And it just gives you that. I think I've enjoyed just experimenting, a little bit more, because
that's how I'm tell it. It is an experiment. I'm still doing the stuff in the sketchbooks. I'm still doing it in hand. And if anything, it's actually, you might find this as well. Going back to the sketchbooks, I'm now a little bit more confident with the kind of, because I've got okay, well, yeah, all right, well, let's just do it. And it's that freeingness of getting out of your own way. I don't think I'll ever give up doing analog, and I don't think I'll give up doing digital now. I like the fact that you can do both, and some things you may want to look a little bit more kind of bit more kind of crisp, and some things you want to kind of have that edge to.
And the deadline, I think, is part of that. Is what you're working to. I've certainly produced a lot more pages faster than I ever could, sort of analog, which of course is one reason it's used a lot more in the industry. But there is I think it also has encouraged me to try different viewpoints, or try my figure work. Now I can push it a little bit further than I might have played something safer, because I knew I could draw that angle safely, and it wasn't going to take me that long to battle through it. But now I can try, I've been pushing the bird's eye or the worm's eye, and just because I've got the ability now in this system to being able to manipulate it, and not scan it in and do the Photoshop, print it out, try it again.
Yeah.
So that's been a big boon, definitely. Oh, right. Well, that was a big plunge into digital cartooning talk there. I love the process stuff, though. I'm sorry.
I love process. Yeah. So I really do. And I think even people who don't create comics themselves, I think everyone really likes. I haven't met a comics fan yet who didn't like talking about process, because it's how this stuff is made. It's how it's this, and it's even people who love film, even if they're not filmmakers, they'll be interested in what a cinematographer does. Exactly. They'll be interested in how the Sandman works or whatever.
Yeah.
So for comics, you're interested. I don't think you can help but be interested. If you've got any kind of passion for it, I don't think you can help but be interested by the process. So for me anyway, I just love it. I could talk about it literally all day.
Right. Well, before you go, you've written a book with Tim Pilcher on World Comics.
That's right. Too.
Did you write two on World?
Yeah, I wrote one about cartooning as well, called The Complete Cartooning Course, years and years ago. But yeah,
that's right.
We've written two books together, yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with US and UK comics. But while you're on, I wanted to know, what international comics should they be on the lookout for?
Oh, how long is a piece of string? There are so many brilliant comics being produced all around the world. From South America. South America has got several hubs of brilliant cartooning. You've got obviously the Argentinian hub, where you've got you've had historically people like Osterheld and Brescia. And again, Brescia has a daughter that does comics. He has a son that does comics, and they've gone on and but the Argentina is a real hotbed. There was Fiero magazine, which was brilliant. It's not being published anymore, unfortunately, but there are still cartoonists coming out of there. Eduardo Rizzo, people like that, that are just phenomenal cartoonists. Brazil has got a really great cartooning comics kind of background. You've got, Mexico has got a wonderful, it's a lot more small press, but it's a wonderful kind of thing. You can then move into Europe. You've got the whole Franco-Belgian scene. You've got Germany. Spain has got a phenomenal scene at the moment. There are cartoonists. One cartoonist I would say to be on the lookout for, and he's been recently translated into English, is Paco Roca, who is a simply marvellous cartoonist. I can't remember the name of the book offhand, but I will send you a note with it.
Brilliant.
It's just been published by Fantagraphics. It's about him going and meeting a guy who was in the Spanish Civil War, who then escaped. And this to France, and this guy's life, he then went from one fascist kind of uprising to, being the Nazis and stuff, and being part of the resistance and all that kind of stuff. And it's more about the relationship between him and this guy. Absolutely. The guy can draw like you wouldn't believe, but he's also a fantastic writer. And again, he's doing things that are quite... one of my particular little loves within comics is what's known as meta comics, which are comics about comics, or comics that manipulate the form somehow. And he's recently done an exhibition in, I think it's Valencia, where he did it, which is basically it's a gallery, and he's actually drawn on the walls of the gallery this cartoonist drawing a figure and then having a heart attack, and then the figure coming to life and then trying to escape into the real world. And it takes up this whole gallery, and it's phenomenal stuff. That leads on to things like UBAPO, the UBAPO movement, which is is basically the workshop for the potential of comics, which is you give yourself constraints, and within those constraints, that then leads you to create just ever more fantastic stuff. There are so many people in France and Belgium who are just brilliant. Anything by Louis Trondheim is worth looking at. There's people like Calofia, people like Menu, all of these fantastic cartoonists who are on the more kind of the less kind of commercial end. But even then, the new Asterix books by Ferry and Conrad are breathing new life into the characters. I never thought that would happen. To me, you had Goscinny, then when he died, Uderzo took it over doing the whole lot, and the writing went kind of, and I just thought, yeah, he's going to do it until he dies, and then that'll be it. But he gave it over to these guys. He handpicked them, and it's got a lot. It's become, wow, it's really good. Quite up to Goscinny's yet, but give them time. They're on their third book. The third book's coming out soon. You've then got, there's a scene in Italy that's brilliant. There's a scene in Germany that's brilliant. You can then go, there is a fantastic scene in Eastern Europe. There are all these kind of, Poland's got a brilliant scene. I will dig out some people and maybe, that can go in the notes.
Yeah, stick a post,
Yeah, Russia has got some fantastic cartoons, and a lot of them are actually working in American comics now. There's a real kind of cross-cultural thing going on. So basically, it's a worldwide thing, and there always has been this world of comics, and even it's just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's phenomenal. So yeah, I will pick out some people for. Brilliant.
Oh, well, that's great, because we can, like you say, with the podcast notes, and we'll put a post on the Comics Festival podcast website. Brilliant. Well, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Brad. So where can people find your social media?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Ninth Art. That's NINTHART, and that the Ninth Art, which is what the French call comics. I told you I was obsessive. And I'm on Instagram at Ninth Art as well, and that's where you can find my little strips that I do. I call them occasional comics because I try to do them every day, but I just can't manage it with life and everything. But I have no pretension of doing comics as a professional cartoonist anymore. I'm quite happy just to do them because I want to do them.
Yeah.
And if people like them, fantastic. I love, obviously, you go on there and people have liked them. That's great, but that's not what I do it for. I do it because I have to do it.
You have to. Yeah.
So yeah, that's fine anyway, those two places.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, Brad, and I'm sure you'll be on again soon. And
absolute pleasure. I'm always happy to talk comics and process and all of this kind of stuff.
Thanks for listening. You can find me at ThisManThisPete on Instagram and Twitter, or contact me and find links to my comics at thismanthispete.com.
Warning, spoilers ahead! Warning, spoilers ahead! Do you like that?
Good God.
No?
Yes, I mean, I don't know what to say, really, about that. Is that what you're going with?
I've just done it now.
I know you've just done it now.
I can do it again if you want me to.
No, please don't.
No? Tom likes it.
Tom's very quiet now.
Tom, are you still there? Have you gone?
I'm here.
Not putting up with these fools. Right, so we are going to talk now Avengers Endgame. We are going to talk about the whole film. We are going to talk spoilers. Mm-hmm. So if you've not seen the film, turn off now. Simple as that. Just
I thought you were giving a Gapsum to turn off then.
Thank you for listening, but bugger off.
Go see the film, come back, turn us back on.
Yeah, and then see if you agree with what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. So this is 22 films in the making, 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think first and foremost, it shows the care and the love that's been taken over those 22 films to get to this point. Why are you pulling a face there,
Well, because I only liked about 3 of the other 22 films.
Well, we're going to do a big movie talk. I think we're going to try and get everybody on to talk all
then
about
they'll all pick on me.
Well, no, because they're not all good films.
No,
they're not.
They're not.
No.
But they do, in every film, bring something to the characters that's in those films.
Mm-hmm.
And makes you care about the characters, so that when you get to this point, even if the film itself wasn't good, you still cared about the character within that film.
I didn't cry as much as you, let's be honest.
We'll get to that in a minute.
I cried enough for everybody. You're fine.
We'll talk about the bits that we cried at.
Okay.
So I don't think, and I might, please tell me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think anyone will be able to do the same as they've done here with this. I don't think even they'll be able to do the same.
Well, no, because they have, like you said, they spent a long time building up to this.
I don't think the next set will do, because I don't think they've got they'll have the same heroes that we've got there.
They might try and do something with it very similar, but it won't get the same sort of weight and gravitas behind it. No way.
No.
But let's be honest, they've made enough money out of this. I don't think they really care.
No.
Have they beaten Titanic now at the box office?
Yeah, they've broken like 200 odd records for the launch. I think it was a red.
But it's those two they had to beat. That was the last two.
We'll have a look. We'll have to find out.
All right then.
We'll have to find out. So you've watched it the closest, Tom. You watched it last night as we're recording this. So we're gonna have to pull all our memory juices from
Seriously,
2 days ago.
I was going to say 2 days ago we went to see it.
Yeah, but it's hard to remember the full film because so much happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well, let's start this. So it starts with Tony Stark and Nebula sat up in a spaceship.
No, it doesn't.
Does it?
No, it starts with Hawkeye.
With Hawkeye and
it
his
does,
family.
doesn't it? You see?
So you don't even remember 2 days.
I've got
Ian.
Wikipedia
2
here
days.
helping me.
And you're going by Wikipedia. You know how wrong that goes.
Yes, I do. Yeah, you're right. It starts with Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Losing his family. They're just
Which I guess was the
disappear.
first bit where people cried. I didn't because I'm hard.
Well, no, I didn't, because you knew straight away that was going to happen.
Yeah. You knew that. I think you kind of knew that from the trailers of seeing what he looked like and being like, well, it can't be that for no reason, you know.
So he turns into Ronan because of this, essentially.
Yeah.
We'll obviously, you see that down the line. Did you feel that was a necessity? Did they add to the story?
I think they're just trying to make his character a bit more interesting.
You think?
Yeah.
I think it gave him a wee bit more motivation, definitely. I mean, if he was just there and just turning up to be the kind of gradual hero, then he might have not made some of the decisions or some of the sacrifices or anything like in amongst it, you know.
It's set up as well for the whole scene with Black Widow. Because if he hadn't done what he'd done, then it wouldn't have been such a clash, I think.
Possibly. Anyway, there's me just being picky, you see.
You were.
You've got to be picky. Otherwise we'd just be gushing over the whole movie.
I'm a Hawkeye apologist, though, so...
So then we jump to the spaceship.
Well done.
Thank you. Where we got Tony Stark and Nebula. Now we know Tony Stark from the trailers was stuck up there. Yeah. And it was always that. Well, first he always looks like he was on his own and he was about to die. Where that was a slight, differentiation that gave Nebula a bit more warmth. I felt.
Yeah, when he passed out, and you thought, well, that's it. And she popped him up in the captain's seat. Yeah. I
felt that gave her a bit of something that she needed.
Yeah.
It was it's the music that goes along with that bit as well. I was almost at tears with just that.
Oh, no.
I don't think it was because again, you knew he wasn't dead.
Oh yeah,
you knew he'd be going to be all right, and then he was.
What, dead?
He was all right. Captain Marvel came and saved him.
Yes.
Which is fine. See, I'm just being picky. I'm trying to be. I'm going to be as picky as I can because I think it's made it interesting. It just felt a little bit too obvious. A way of saving him. I like some more interesting, but or not leave them up there. It just felt...
You had to get her back, though, this end of the universe to...
Yeah, anyway.
Well, I've heard recently that apparently all the Captain Marvel scenes were shot before her film was actually shot.
Oh.
Okay.
So I don't know if maybe they thought like having her go out there and get on was part of something else, like maybe Pepper had been like receiving his messages or something like that, so then they sent her out there to look for him or what, but it would have probably added that, if they didn't really know what was going to happen within Captain Marvel.
Yeah. But anyway, it worked. It did the job. Yeah. It did the job. It got him back, and I suppose it got her then working into the Avengers as a team, which they then meet them and then off. Is that the point then? They then go off and go and see Thanos? Yes, they do, don't they?
Not before Tony Stark has a right good go at Captain America.
Yeah,
no, that was good.
That fight.
Yeah. That was interesting, because you would, wouldn't you, if you'd been... Because I suppose at this point he doesn't know what had happened on Earth.
No, and he's still got all that resentment from Civil War as well. I mean, they never got to settle any of that, even in Infinity War. He left the phone on Earth. He was kind of begrudgingly phoning him from Infinity War, So
I did feel a bit sorry for Cap, though.
No, I don't.
Oh, I did.
No, he's he's an annoying character. But that's just me.
You don't like nicey guys, do you?
Oh, God, no.
Well, why do you like me?
Who knows?
Say nothing.
Yeah, no, I find him, he's too nicey, and therefore he's a bit annoying.
Okay. So anyway, they go off then to give Thanos a bit of a fight, which I thought was interesting. Straight before we get to what happened, I was quite interested that they pulled him in so quickly. It really gets your mind thinking, like, what? Oh, it's a bit short, isn't it? They'll grab the stones, or what's going to happen?
That was your 3 hours.
We were saying it'd be funny if it just kind of ended there.
Yeah. Oh, we've got the stones, aren't we, for 2.5 hours. But no, as we find out, he finds that he's destroyed the stones, which straight away stops, because everyone assumed, time stone.
Yeah.
They'll get that off him somehow, sorted.
Yeah.
And it stops all that dead in the water straight away.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing there, which is Thor, I suppose, is the most interesting character in that particular scene.
Yeah, he's going into this half-cocked and feeling massively guilty for not going for the head in Infinity War.
Yeah.
He's pissed.
Oh, yeah.
It's the best way of saying it. And the shot where he just swings his axe and ka-chunk.
But they're kind of like, because he was vulnerable, wasn't he? He didn't have any weapons. He didn't nothing.
No, yeah, he was injured.
Yeah,
he'd given up on. Well, he'd done what he wanted to do, so he was ready to.
Yeah,
to go. It was almost like his plan all along to just like that was his rest. Yes. Was to get his head lopped off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was shocking. It was definitely shocking, that's for sure. And then you think to yourself, well, now what are they going to do? So that, again, brilliant writing.
Yeah.
You're already thinking what's going to happen, from what you'd expect to. It was great. So I like that. So then we jump into the future, 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so 50% of the world's gone and done and dusted.
Yep.
You've got the last few Avengers trying to do what they can. Captain America holding talks with the survivors who are trying to deal with the grief.
Did you notice some of the, two of the survivors in particular? One was one of the Russo brothers, was the guy that was speaking about going on the date.
I didn't know. I think I've heard that since, but I wouldn't have realised at the time.
I didn't realise.
And the bald guy that's asking him the question is Jim Starlin himself.
Interesting. Well, why not? Get in there. Get in there.
Yeah, it's the whole reason it exists, so yeah.
Black Widow bringing everyone together in that meeting.
Oh, is that when she's speaking to them in the meeting?
Yeah, yes. The hologrammy bits.
Yeah, the hologram bit. And Captain Marvel's had a nice wee haircut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, she looks more like the character now, kind of thing. I guess that was what they were trying to pull it into.
Yeah.
I suppose, it had been 5 years. There will be changes. That's the way.
Yeah, Black Widow's hair, cool.
It's a bit like yours.
A bit like mine.
So around that time as well, we see Scott Lang return as Ant-Man. Mm-hmm. And he just pops up out of nowhere. And you're like thinking, well, that didn't happen in the last film. That was what mine was juggling. It's like, he wasn't... In the last film, they didn't leave him locked away. So they explained, obviously, they've gone to it. But yeah, it was like, what's going on? But then
that was the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, wasn't it?
Yeah, we didn't watch the end. We didn't watch the credits.
Did we not watch the credits?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, so we missed that bit.
I missed that bit?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
You see?
That was
I caught up on that bit because I thought we didn't watch.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, was him going into the quantum realm. I can't remember what he's going in for, but he's going into the quantum realm and he tries to come back out, but the camera goes out and all of them have been dusted and he's been stuck in the quantum realm. So I'm assuming somebody's found all his stuff and put it in a storage after that.
Yes.
Why didn't we watch the end credits of that?
I don't know, because we only watched that a few days ago.
I know. But yeah, and this is where I actually felt sorry for him more than anyone in this entire film, by the fact that he's lost 5 years of his daughter's life.
Yeah.
All the others sort of get them back, but he's lost that 5 years.
Yeah, but she's still alive, so...
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But she'd have come back if she'd been one of the 50%, she'd come back as a kid.
I suppose
See?
So, yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Anyway, so he pops him up and...
But he does what, sorry?
He pops up, pops over to the Avengers to explain what he's done and that he's theorising he can go back in time.
Yeah.
Because it was only 5 hours for him, whereas it was 5 years for everybody else.
Yeah. Which, there you go. There's your plot twist straight away, There's how they're getting through not having the stones.
Wibbly wobbly timey-wimey
Wibbly wobbly
stuff.
time. Again, I thought that was clever. I did. It's the only way they could have done it, really.
Yeah, they had to bring in time travel somewhere.
That's the only way they could have done it.
Yeah.
But then again, we thought the time travel was always going to be go back and kill Thanos or whatever beforehand, but it wasn't.
No.
It wasn't like that.
To which Rhodey makes a joke about going back and killing baby Thanos at one point.
So then the plan is to go back in time, get all the stones from specific places within time.
Well, you missed out the bit where they have to go and try and get Tony Stark.
I've not got to that bit yet.
Well, you see, I thought you
I'll
jumped
get
ahead
into that bit
there.
in a second. And then come back and do the click once we've got all the stones. That's what I was about to finish with.
All right, then.
However, they need someone's particular brain to work out exactly how to do this. What was that drop? You okay over there, Tom?
Oh, that'll be me drinking water, sorry.
Just found this little drop. I thought, is he actually sitting in the bathroom?
I may be.
So they go to have a chat with Tony, who's living out in the woods with a little kid.
Yes.
Now, this is obviously a moment, I think, as parents, you can understand. Do you want to risk your child's life and what is his happiness, essentially, for the world?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it would. It'd be fine.
And I thought that was the right way, the way to play it, that he wasn't going to do it.
No, but then, of course, it played on his mind. So
yeah, he's still got that animosity towards Cap as well, just a wee bit, but it's still there.
Yeah.
He's still holding on to that he wasn't there for him, so why should he be there for them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think my only issue with this part, and this is me being picky again, is the way Pippa pushes him a bit to his missus. Pippa, innit? Pepper, sorry, not Pippa. Shut up. My memory is rubbish. She pushes him a bit too easily, I feel.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I think she just knows him.
If you go back on some of the Iron Man films as well, there is certain situations that, even though it's mad, she has said to him, like, you should still go for it, you should still do it, even though she's seen as like the person that tries to hold him back from stuff and try to keep him safe.
I just think when it's your own kid. When it's your own kid, though, that's possibly
Yeah, true.
That's a bit that seemed a bit too easy. But anyway, that's me being
Picky.
Yes, picky. I'm allowed to be picky. But, it's not enough to pull me out of the film, but I'm allowed to be picky. Don't sigh. But anyway, he agrees, works out a way to do it, blah, 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 and off they trot into the past.
That's exactly how it happened in the film.
Exactly how it happens.
You've got to remember they get turned down from Tony Stark, and they have to go and find a bigger brain.
Yes.
And who's got a bigger brain now than Tony Stark?
Yes.
Than good old Hulk wearing clothes.
Professor Banner.
Professor Hulk.
That, I must admit, it took me a few seconds to like that face.
Okay.
I loved it.
Once I got it, it was fine, but the initial shock of, whoa, whoa, that's weird.
I think that was one of the best bits of Banner Hulk is him catching a selfie with some kids. And as they're walking away, I'm going, dab, dab.
My only sort of downside to the whole past two films is we didn't see the Hulk really go and be the Hulk. Other than at the start of Infinity War, you didn't really see him Hulk out, which I suppose is their way of stopping what he could actually do to Thanos. Let's be honest. If the Hulk really wanted to go and destroy someone, he would.
Yeah.
And that's probably their way of calming him down a little bit. But it would have been cool to see that proper fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like what they did that. I like they took it straight out of the comics. A bit of Professor Hulk there.
Yeah, 90s era. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, it was clever. Very clever. And I also like the fact they didn't have to explain it too much. They just gave a little line and it's like, sod you, that's it. That's all you're getting. Done.
Yeah, about him being comfortable. And
we don't need to explain it all.
Yeah.
So, no, I liked that.
It's kind of very much how they handled the time travel aspect as well.
Well, yeah, don't go into it too much.
Yeah, it was very much they just went, the way they kind of explained the time travel thing, like Banner explains it to them in a way that all the past films that came before matter, basically. It was like, this is this one throwaway line, all these films are safe, don't worry, we're not going to change anything, kind of thing. That was their way of saying it, but he does it in a more eloquent way than, they're all right,
There's obviously whinges on the internet. There's me whinging about bits of the film, going on about time travel and how it doesn't make sense, but you can't win with time travel.
I think if time travel comes into something, you just have to suspend all disbelief from there. Like, as soon as time travel comes into it, you have to just let some stuff go. If you want a hardcore time travel film, watch Primer. Otherwise, just suspend disbelief and get into Back to the Future head and just do it. Like, just go for the entertainment.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So off they go, back in time. They all choose.
Well, no. You see, you're doing it again. You have to pull Rudd because obviously Hulk, like they.
I know,
they
but we want to finish this at some point today.
No, not right now. But I like that bit of Ant-Man going back and coming.
Okay,
back in different ages.
Yeah, that was funny.
I thought that was hilarious.
It was.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. And it showed that they couldn't figure it out, and that's why they needed Tony Stark. And
I must admit, Scott Lang as a character.
Scott Lang?
Scott Lang.
Oh, Scott Lang.
Was an exceptionally good comedic side to this movie.
Yes.
He was very good.
Yeah, so was Ruffalo as Hulk.
Well,
There's a lot of good bits.
And Thor.
We've not got to Thor yet, actually. Let's talk Thor.
We've missed him out. Team yet.
Yeah, that was brave.
That was good.
What
I
they
loved
did.
it.
I think the biggest just general smile on my face was when they were driving down to New Asgard. Is it New Asgard?
Yeah.
And you've got Hulk just sat in the back, just bobbing along in his van.
It's
looking
with that
really
song
content.
playing as well.
The song playing.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just put this grin on my face of yes.
Yeah.
It was lovely. Really was. So yeah, Thor has
Let himself go.
let himself go. Yeah.
Just a bit.
Just a tad.
That scene of him just drunk in his
His front room.
I was going to say castle, but yeah, in his little wooden hut. Valkyrie essentially running the show
Yeah.
out in the front in this little fishing village that they now have.
Yeah, in Cornwall, by the
It was wonderful. It really was absolutely brilliant. And the nerve that they had to have him in a fat suit for the whole movie.
Well, or was it CG, whatever it was?
I reckon a fat suit. That was a full fat suit. That was ballsy, but brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's amazing to see how Chris Hemsworth and the characters evolved from that original movie where he was a bit straight-laced.
Yeah.
Through, obviously, Ragnarok being the massive changing point to now. It's amazing. And he's become such an interesting character now.
He's kind of relaxed into the role, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It feels like it's his now.
Oh, it definitely is, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's much more interesting role as well.
Mm.
It's just great to see him having like proper comedy chops. Like he's really good. He was always kind of a wee bit funny in some roles, but this is like he's just going full comedian. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And he still gets to kick ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was brilliant what they did with him, as I say, and it just follows throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
How destroyed he is as a being, as a person.
Yeah.
He's properly suffering from like PTSD from the whole thing.
Which you would have thought he wouldn't have. That's another interesting of all the characters.
Yeah.
You thought his confidence would have kept him up, but
no.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely wonderful. So now they go back in time.
All right, then I bet you go back in time now.
No, you still got to get Ronan, but that was kind of a throwaway bit.
He's there. He's done. So they're all together, back in time. And they're all split off into various areas of time.
They figured out all the stones are in specific places so much so that they can split it into just 3 zones, so they can have 3 teams kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how they hark back to previous movies.
Or just shoehorn some clips in from the old ones.
Well, it did. Majority of it was complete new scenes. Well, it was, because we didn't see those bits that happened.
Yeah.
You know, when the back where the original Avengers took place, you see Hulk getting upset with the car at the beginning. That's funny. That was original. And then you see them trying to get the Tesseract, and all of those scenes, other than, majority, they probably had to refilm a lot of it because it was done at different angles as well.
Yeah, it was actually, yeah.
And then a lot of those scenes where they're then walking away down the elevators and stuff, that was all new.
Yeah, well, it was good to see how Loki got his mouthpiece and stuff like that as well.
Yeah,
because we saw him with that mouthpiece at the end of Avengers, and we're like, why's he got that on his mouth?
Yeah.
It was good for you wrap up. Yeah, you're right though. They probably would have had to do a whole new shoot, unless they had like B footage that was shot from a different angle. I don't know.
But then they have the cock up on this where they lose the Tesseract due to Mr. Hulk again, being a bit angry, which then sees Loki vanish.
Yep.
So the question I have with that is has the timeline been recreated so that didn't happen, or has that happened?
No, because they went back and got it from somewhere else, so it will always be.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's that will have always happened. In their present, he would have always died, but it doesn't mean that another one doesn't exist now, kind of thing.
Ready for the TV series.
Yeah, ready for the TV show, effectively, yeah.
So I liked what they did with that. Obviously, Captain America has a fight with himself and looks at his backside. That was entertaining.
That was funny. That's from all the internet memes and stuff, wasn't it, afterwards? So I was quite, that was quite amusing. And
the not the battle, the scene in the lift as well. That was very clever.
Yeah.
That again just harks to the comics.
Yes.
Absolutely love it. So anyway, they lose the Tesseract, so they have to find an alternative way to get that. Was it Tesseract? I can't remember which one. No, it was.
Yeah.
So they come up with the idea then to go back in the days when Howard Stark and I can't remember his name.
Hank
Pym, that's it.
That's it.
Creates the first timey-wimey bottles of stuff. And that scene with Iron Man and his dad was lovely.
It was actually.
It was really, really sweet.
It was really good.
And
that's one of the first flashes we get of Tony kind of realising what he could potentially lose as well, thinking about his own kid.
And at no point did I think then what was going to happen at the end was going to happen. Even though now you think back, that was obvious.
Yeah, a lot of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, that scene was lovely, and I think that's where I got a little bit of a...
Did you get a tear?
I didn't cry, but I was welling up a little bit.
Blimey.
Oh, sure.
I got a wee bit welled up at Cap spotting Peggy in the office.
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was sitting watching him going, oh no.
Just that piece of glass between them.
Although the other part of me was thinking, Peggy. But, anyway. Then we've got the other scene where they jump to the original Guardians of the Galaxy film.
Yeah.
You got Nebula and War Machine.
Yeah.
Which, again, they didn't really do much there in regards to altering things, but it was just interesting how they, you got to see Star-Lord do his little dance again.
Yeah.
And they call him stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing his dance, he's singing without the music.
Yeah. Which that scene, that whole film, Guardians of the Galaxy is just amazing, let's be honest. And obviously this then gives us the link to get past Thanos into the story.
Oh, yes, with the connection.
Yeah.
With Nebula.
Which, again, I thought was really clever.
I was like, no!
No, he's back.
Oh, it's all going to go wrong.
I thought we'd got rid of this ugly bastard.
You did know what was going to happen between the two Nebulas, though, to get...
Oh, well, I didn't. I wasn't even thinking.
Did you not?
That,
I was already like, I know what's going to go.
So they stopped Nebula from returning, and then they, give her a bit of a beating up and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one thing, because she changed the bit on her head when she came through. But the other thing, she had two hands. And our Nebula has a skeletal...
Aye, but she had one hand wrapped in, tape. Because she unwraps the tape to hack into the time machine.
Oh, I must have missed that little bit. I saw her hack into the time machine, but right, okay.
I didn't spot that the first time either, but it was last night when I saw it. She actually unravels something around her hand, and she has it all covered by her jacket as well, so you can't even see her arm or anything.
Because I was like, why has no one spotted the hand?
Yeah.
And then finally we got Black Widow off to get the Soul Stone. We'll call him Ronan now.
Okay, we'll call him Ronan.
Now this was a clever scene.
You've got Thor and Rocket as well.
Oh yeah, sorry, you'll get to them in a minute. This was a clever scene. And at no point did I think we were losing Black Widow.
No.
I didn't think we were losing either of them, to be honest, but at no point did I think Black Widow was the one that was going to...
No.
It was really sad.
I cried at that one.
Did you cry at that?
Yeah, I...
See, I didn't, because
neither did I.
Didn't think...
Okay.
I didn't believe that was it. That's why I didn't believe that was
I
the
thought
end.
their whole exchange was so personal and emotional,
Well, it was brilliant.
and that's what made me cry, was their friendship and relationship, and then each of them just willing to die for the other one basically, and that's what made me cry.
I definitely welled up at Jeremy Renner's face. He pulls a pained face really well. I definitely welled up, but I never got a tear at that. I don't know if it was just because it was so unexpected that it was just like, oh, you didn't really get a chance to react, kind of thing. You know?
So I was sure she was coming back somehow.
And I love her character as well, and I was really upset.
Well, again, it's not the last we'll see of her. She is coming back, but it'll be a prequel, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Then again, they can always bring him back whenever they want, especially
there'll be some kind of weird time thing.
Those two, her and Gamorg, sat in the Soul Stone place. They can do what they want with them if they wanted to down the line.
That's very true.
Yeah, true.
But no, that was quite shocking. And then you've got Rocket and Thor, which his scene with his mum was really nice.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of parental stuff going on in this.
There is.
For the guidance, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah. It's all kind of just giving them their moment and giving them the lost time that they completely messed up on, and all their mistakes and everything, giving them that little bit back to give them just a little bit of redemption within themselves, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It also gives him the way to get his hammer back.
Yeah.
Which was cool. But still, he turns into his Thor suit, still fat. Which
I love that.
Because, again, if they wanted to, they could have just said, right, he's fine now.
Yeah, he's a god. He can do whatever he wants.
Yes. But no, he's still chubby Thor.
Yeah, chubby Thor, and he gets a braid in his beard as well.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant.
And a man bun.
Oh, man bun. Oh.
So they get all the stones, all's good. The Professor Hulk is the one to wield the gauntlet because he's strong enough to take it.
But of course, while this is happening, Nebula is hacking in.
Maybe it's hacking in, bringing in the good old baddies.
The switch to Nebula. Yeah.
So they bring everyone back, which is great. So you now sort of know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
For sort of the rest of the film.
I thought it was a real shame. Brought everyone back, and most of them are going to die in the next scene.
Yeah.
This big fight.
It was like, they didn't even give you a breath either. It was like, all happiness, and then just raining fire. A second. Like, oh!
So we're sort of getting towards the big finale, which I don't know how long the finale was, but it must have been about an hour from that point.
I don't know.
I think it was about 45 minutes.
45 minutes. It was,
from when they first kind of when the three of them, Thor, Iron Man, and Cap, spot him. I think from that moment on, it's like 45 minutes.
So Thor's done the click. It's worked. As far as you know.
Thor did the click.
Not Thor. Hulk's done the click. Thor could have done it, probably. And I like the way he's injured. And he stays burnt and injured, which is interesting. Would he have done that if he was actual Hulk? I don't know. It's interesting that the character. We'll see if he stays scarred.
Yeah.
I thought it was more the gauntlet, because that gauntlet that Thanos had for the original snap was actually
especially made.
Especially made by the Star, whereas Tony's is just done with his Iron Man stuff.
That's true. That's true. Thanos comes and obviously start fighting, and this, as soon as they start fighting, so go on.
Well, no, you got all the everyone trapped in different places.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Where you had that really good chase scene, haven't you, with Hawkeye, with all the things going after him. He's got the gauntlet.
Yeah.
So I love that.
You like that?
Yeah.
Thank you. That gave a moment for Thor, Cap, and Iron Man to actually just be the trio as well.
That's true. Yeah. So they start fighting Thanos, and this is a scene where you assume Captain America is going to die because that's been a whole thing. He's going from the series. He's off. And he was getting the crap beaten out of him, and you assumed he was going to do something, but he was gone.
Well, I thought when he punches him in the chest when he's on the ground, I thought, that was it. He's just going to gasping his last in the last bit.
But we haven't said as well, he wields the hammer.
Yes.
Which was very whoa.
Yeah.
Thanos is about to do to Thor what Thor did to Thanos in Infinity War. He's moments from it, and then Mjolnir gets picked up, and there he is, standing with it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Amazing.
Really superb. And again, it's just clever writing. I don't know if that's happened in the comics. Must admit, I've not read that, but it's clever. Loved it. Nikki's shaking her head. You think,
No, it does.
I assumed it was going to be Captain Marvel that would pick it up, I must admit.
No.
But yeah, it all makes sense with him picking up. Absolutely wonderful. So, they start beating him up, but then it all, as you expect, starts going wrong as he brings all his forces through the wormhole, Thanos.
Yes.
There's no way, obviously, three of them can stop all of them.
And you get that beautiful shot of Cap going up against the entire army.
Yeah, struggling to his feet and going up with his ruined shield.
Yeah, half a shield.
But then obviously Wakanda comes to save the world.
I was welling up at that bit. Just hearing Sam say, "On your left." I was like, oh my God.
I think at that point I got that feeling in my stomach, and it was at least a full half hour of just tenseness, of excitement and joy and pleasure as all the good guys come through and start fighting. And then you get the individual scenes, don't you?
Yes.
Yep.
So you got the Spider-Man and Tony Stark, and that.
Oh, that was so sweet. Yeah.
That got me, I think.
Did you cry at that bit as well?
I was almost there with
that.
It's a father-son thing. It always does it. But it was lovely.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. Then you got the
all the women in the MCU got it.
I loved that bit.
Yeah, it was good.
I loved it.
Really
It wasn't
good.
long enough, but I loved it. I was like, oh, it's the girls.
I think it shows. I understand that they go on about women not having the lead roles and stuff, but it shows how many strong characters they have got in those universes.
And a Pegasus.
And a Pegasus. Is that it? Yeah. You're not being a typical female there, love. It's got a Pegasus in it. I like it.
I like them. I want a flying horse. But yes.
But no, it was very good.
Yeah.
And I like the whole interlinking of trying to get the gauntlet to the timey-wimey machine.
I liked as well the little with Pepper and Tony. I loved that bit when they're together in the sky.
Yeah.
Fighting together.
Good.
Yeah. We'll see if she continues being that role or not. We'll see.
I would have thought so.
Be intriguing. Depends if she wants to do it herself. Yeah.
I kind of had a thought that it would be like Morgan might grow up. They could do it that way, like she could grow up and then don the costume sort of thing, so that Gwyneth Paltrow can get out of her contract.
But yeah, then they continue fighting and so forth, and then we get to that final scene when Captain Marvel comes down, destroys the ships, and you assume that it's going to be her that stops Thanos. And obviously she's beating the living daylights out of him, but then he uses one of the stones to send her flying.
Yeah.
Which,
and then you got Doctor Strange just puts one finger up to Tony.
He does.
And gives him that this is your one chance. This is it.
This is it. This is the one.
Yeah. So no one else could have done that last bit apart from Tony.
Apart from Tony, which he didn't want to tell him.
No.
He
couldn't tell him.
And I think you sort of the dread, though, when that happens.
Yep.
When you see him slammed. Well, I suppose as soon as he's got the gauntlet, he can't wield it.
Yeah.
He's not strong enough to wield that gauntlet.
Yeah.
And I thought it was clever when he does the click, and you just see Thanos just resign himself.
Yeah.
He just sits down.
Yeah, you can see everything's falling apart.
Yeah.
That's it.
No more fighting. Oh well.
Yeah, in a weird way, Thanos is very fair in a strange way, in his own twisted ideas.
We didn't bring that up, actually. You always felt for him.
Yeah.
I felt up until the point where he says, I'm going to enjoy destroying all of you.
Yeah.
Up until that point, you had it, and you sort of understood what he was doing.
Yeah.
Past Thanos is definitely more ruthless, 100%. Even from the very moment that we were introduced to him, and he's coming through that bloody helicopter blade thing.
It's not even that far past, though, is it? That's the thing.
No, it's
only a few
not,
years, I assume.
He is
in
brutal.
History. Yeah. No, definitely. It's when he must have hit 40. Life goes downhill then. But yeah, so as soon as Tony put that on, you knew, and that was like, excuse my language, shit. He's not. He's dying.
Yeah.
They're killing Tony Stark.
Yeah. Because
again, I assumed Captain America, that was going to be his role. He was going to die doing something like that.
I'd rather he had died.
Hey.
Just irritating.
And then you get the little link up between him and Spider-Man.
Yeah. I like that. That was sweet.
Yeah.
Did you cry at that as well?
No.
Okay.
No, I definitely cried with Pepper more than Spider-Man. She just looks so resigned in him, being like, rest now, and just happy with him, and then he just dies and her face crumbles. Oh, even thinking about it now, I'm like, oh.
It's 22 years of care. 10 years of caring for these characters, isn't it? It's especially with him. Essentially his film created this whole universe. It's long time.
Yeah, which goes on almost in the funeral scene with seeing Jon Favreau almost looking broken, considering he was the one that kind of started it and had the faith in Robert Downey to get him in the role and stuff like that. Yeah,
it was lovely seeing that from just all the groups of heroes together. Go on.
But the teenager that no one knows from Iron Man 3,
which was interesting.
I think that's going to be the next Iron Man.
We'll get to that. No, we've been watching some stuff, haven't we? We'll get to that in a minute. The bit that got me welling up was
Another bit.
that little chat between it was Jon Favreau and Tony's daughter.
Oh, what?
About the hamburgers.
Cheeseburgers.
Yeah, cheeseburgers.
I was destroyed.
That was it. That's what got me.
Were you again blubbing by this point? I know I'd passed you my tissues by this point.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it was, but that. Yeah. That again, it's that father-daughter type.
Oh, God.
It's obvious. It's what does it for me.
Yeah, it was even like Tony's like video will when he says "Love you 3000" and he's looking right at her. I was like, oh my God.
But it was a fitting end.
Yes,
to him as a character. I think that's a nice way. And then we get to the other tearjerker.
Just like, well, we've got all the wrap up of everybody first. Everybody has their own wee sort of wrap ups, like the Asgardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, passes it
I like that.
Thor leaving new Asgard in the hands of Valkyrie.
Yeah.
What else? Scarlet Witch and Clint just seem to be happy being them by the looks of things. They haven't really got anything else.
No.
And Thor goes off with the Guardians.
Yeah, we just said that.
No, we said about leaving Valkyrie, but going off with the Guardians as well.
We said that as well.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, I would.
Oh, no, so Clint went back with his family, so I forgot about that.
Yes.
Everybody kind of got their own wee sort of wrap up, and then we get our wrap up of Steve Rogers.
Yes. And here's the other teary bit.
Yeah, I literally can't even speak about this.
Really?
Oh, come on.
It's sweet. It was what he always wanted. So he got what he wanted.
He did. But it's not just that. It's also, considering we love Agent Carter so much, it's that she got what she wanted as well.
Yeah, because she always loved
That's the other side of it, you know. If you invested in her as a character, so it's like the pair of them.
Yeah.
Just
they got their happy ending.
Yeah.
You can't begrudge him that one.
Just him going away and then him staying away in the past. Like, you can see it on Bucky's face. He just gives a wee sort of smile and a nod as if, like, I know what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought Bucky would be the next Captain America.
I had this conversation with somebody that it makes more sense to make it Sam purely on the basis that because he's not superpowered, it gives him certain flaws and vulnerabilities that might make it better for a narrative standpoint. Okay. If they make any other films with him or anything, it'll make it more interesting as a film because he's not got any sort of super soldier serum or anything like that.
It's just what he can do. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But it's also because it gives you that little bit to show Bucky kind of saying to him, like, go ahead, you take the shield kind of thing. Also, there's a TV show with Bucky, so he can't take it.
But no, that was a cleverly done scene because you sat there thinking, I'm sure he's going to... He's gone from the series, you know, and then they bring that in. It was nice.
Yeah.
It was very, very nice. So overall, wonderful.
Yeah. Also leaves open for the next Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously, search for Gamora.
Yeah.
Where's she gone? Yeah. The past woman, she's vanished.
Yes.
So, no, absolute wonderful film in its own right.
Yeah. Incredible.
Series of films. It's amazing. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's a perfect wrap up. Definitely. Like I say, if you just suspend disbelief with time travel stuff from that moment, it's just enjoyable from start to finish. It's just perfect.
So, as far as the future goes, what we were reading about the Young Avengers, wasn't it?
Yes.
Ooh.
So, Iron Boy.
Iron Boy. So the young lad who was from Iron Man 3, possibly taking on that role of a young Iron Man, essentially. Then there was Scott Lang's daughter.
Yes.
Taking on the young... I don't know what the character's
Stature.
called.
Stature, yeah.
Now she's like the right age for it as well. So there's all these... That's a possibility they could go.
I think that may happen.
I think it would... Yeah, another team up.
Yeah.
I think that would work.
It'd be good.
So, yeah. That's possible for the future. And if they're not thinking that, get me. Even though I've just stolen that from other people. I'll write it.
Okay.
Pay me lots of money. I'll do anything they want.
Yeah.
So the next film is Spider-Man Far From Home. Oh, there's a final picky moment.
Oh, yes, how? All of the ones from his school
all
got
of his
dusted.
friends.
All of them.
Yes.
Now, I said this to somebody. They said, "Oh, what? Only that school? What? All of them got dusted?" I said, "No, there'll be loads of schools everywhere. It just so happens that Peter Parker's one is the only one that got dusted because that's the only one they're telling the stories about. So who cares about the rest?"
It's probably the only sort of it's an inconsistency which we're just going to have to ignore.
Yeah, it's one to just shelve that.
Unless, to be fair, they may mention it in the films that, such and such is dead or gone or,
or a teacher now.
Yeah,
well,
they may well link to it. They may well.
That's what I was thinking, like one of their teachers might suddenly be like somebody that was in like a couple of grades above them or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see. It might be interesting. I hope they do.
Mm.
They need to do something just to knock that little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Edge off. Anyway, that's us rambling enough for long enough now. We've almost lasted as long as the movie itself.
Still not as long as Mike and Pete though, so it's fine.
No.
No one is as long as...
I have to... I've only got a certain amount of storage that I can put these podcasts on, and I'm running towards the end of it because of Mike and Pete. So thank you very much, Tom, for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me, folks.
And thank you for being part of this podcast overall now. You're now
Very
a
fun.
family member.
A family member. Aww.
It's not something to be proud of.
I was going to say, I was literally away to say, I'm very proud of it, and then you just killed it dead in the water.
And thank you very much for listening, everybody. We will be back with Simon Spurrier.
Oh, yes.
What a lovely guy.
That was such an interesting interview.
Oh, really was.
We were just hanging on his every word,
yeah,
weren't we?
Yeah.
He's really, really interesting.
And it's not much about his work, actually. It's about the industry and everything around it. It's really good.
Fantastic.
So he's going to be at the Lakes this year, and we'll have him on next episode so you can hear that then. Again, thank you for listening. Say bye-bye, Tom.
I'll see you later, folks.
Thank you from me. Goodbye. And...
Me. Ta-ra.
There we go. You sounded so northern.
Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.
This podcast is part of Britpod Scene, an independent network of uniquely British podcasts that's always growing. Check out BritpodScene.com or Britpod Scene on Twitter to find out more.